Καλημέρα σε όλους. Είμαστε έτοιμοι να ξεκινήσουμε με μια μικρή καθυστέρηση. Λύσαμε κάποια μικρά τεχνικά προβλήματα που είχαμε και ξεκινάμε με το πρόγραμμα. Απευθύνει χαιρετισμό ο Αντιδήμαρχος Οικονομικών και Επικεφαλής Αστικής Ανθεκτικότητας του Δήμου Θεσσαλονίκης, κ. Μιχάλης Κούπκας.
Καλημέρα σε όλους. Όσοι είστε διαζώσεις, καλημέρα και σε όλους εσάς που μας παρακολουθείτε ηλεκτρονικά. Καλημέρα φυσικά και εκ μέρους του Δημάρχου Θεσσαλονίκης, Κωνσταντίνου Ζέρβα. Σας καλωσορίζω στο Δημαρχείο της Θεσσαλονίκης, στην αίθουσα του Δημοτικού Συμβουλίου, σε αυτή την τελική πράξη, το καταληκτικό τμήμα του έργου Life Asti. Ένα έργο το οποίο, όπως θα παρουσιαστεί και αναλυτικά από τους επιστήμονες, τους καταρτισμένους επιστήμονες που το υλοποίησαν και θα μιλήσουν αργότερα, προτείνει λύσεις για ένα σύγχρονο φαινόμενο, πρόβλημα, αστική πρόκληση, το φαινόμενο της αστικής θερμικής νησίδας. Ένα φαινόμενο που εξετάστηκε και αποτελεί τμήμα ενός συνόλου προβλημάτων που μεγενθύνονται από την κλιματική κρίση και φυσικά μας εμποδίζουν, δυσχεραίνουν την ποιότητα της ζωής όλων ημών που ζούμε μέσα στο κλεινό Άστι. Σε αυτό το πλαίσιο λοιπόν για την προστασία των πολιτών αλλά και τη διατήρηση καλύτερων, βελτιωμένων και ποιοτικότερων συνθήκων ζωής, σίγουρα οι σύγχρονες υπεύθυνες πόλεις, οι πόλεις αυτές που σέβονται τους πολίτες τους, σέβονται την ευθύνη την οποία αναλαμβάνουν κάθε φορά που οι πολίτες τους επιλέγουν συγκεκριμένους ανθρώπους να τους διοικούν, θα πρέπει να ηγηθούν και ενός αγώνα για την ανάσχεση και την προσαρμογή στην παγκόσμια κλιματική αλλαγή. Ως Δήμος Θεσσαλονίκης έχουμε αναλάβει σημαντικές πρωτοβουλίες, το είδατε και τελευταία με το γεγονός ότι τελικά η Θεσσαλονίκη βρίσκεται μέσα στην αποστολή αυτή που θα την οδηγήσει στα επόμενα χρόνια να είναι μία από τις 100 κλιματικά ουδέτερες πόλεις της Ευρώπης, πιάνοντας το στόχο της Ευρωπαϊκής Ένωσης, όπου η Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση, όπως όλοι αντιλαμβάνεστε, θέλει να είναι η πρώτη κλιματικά ουδέτερη ήπειρος με ορίζοντα το 50, 20 χρόνια λοιπόν νωρίτερα, 100 ευρωπαϊκές πόλεις, μέσα στις οποίες και η πόλη της Θεσσαλονίκης εντάσσεται σε μία αποστολή για να το πετύχει. Και μάλιστα να το πετύχει με κάποιες σημαντικές πρωτοβουλίες και από πλευράς μας και από πλευράς των πολιτών και με κάποιες σημαντικές χρηματοδοτήσεις. Σε πρώτο χρόνο η πληροφόρηση από το πρόγραμμα Horizon είναι ότι η πόλη, μάλλον οι 100 πόλεις παίρνουν 360 εκατομμύρια ευρώ και εκτιμώ ότι ακολουθούν και άλλα προϊστάμενα. Τα στοιχεία που συνηγόρησαν για την επιλογή της πόλης μας ήταν φυσικά η ιδιαίτερη ταυτότητά της, ήταν το κλιματικό της αποτύπωμα και η ικανότητά της για καινοτομία. Ο Δήμος Θεσσαλονίκης στοχεύει στην κινητοποίηση του τοπικού οικοσυστήματος για την υιοθέτηση νέας κουλτούρας, την ανάληψη μιας σειράς πολιτικών και στρατηγικών στόχων που θα επιτρέψουν με βοήθεια φυσικά τεχνική από την Ευρώπη, τη δικτύωση και φυσικά και τα χρηματοδοτικά εργαλεία. Δεν σταματάει όπως βλέπεις προϊστάμενα. Για να οδηγηθεί τελικά σε ουδέτερες εκπομπές αερίων. Και φυσικά μέσα σε αυτές τις δράσεις, μέσα σε αυτές τις θεματικές οι οποίες είναι πολυπίκυλες και πολυεπίπεδες, μιλάμε για καθαρή κινητικότητα, μιλάμε για ενεργειακή απόδοση, για πράσινο αστικό σχεδιασμό, για περισσότερο πράσινο αντιδήμαρχε, για δράσεις επίτευξης ενεργειακής οικονομίας και ενεργειακής αυτονομίας, για εισαγωγή περισσότερου υγρού στοιχείου μέσα στη Θεσσαλονίκη, για μια σειρά πολλών πρωτοβουλειών που και στον πυρήνα τους φυσικά και πάλι έχουν τους πολίτες. Γιατί μόνοι μας δεν πρόκειται να τα κάνουμε, θέλουμε μαζί πάντα και τους πολίτες, γι' αυτό και μέσα στις 100 κλιματικά ουδέτερες πόλεις ένα πολύ μεγάλο μέρος της ευθύνης μας είναι να εκπαιδεύσουμε και τους πολίτες μας και φυσικά και τους μικρούς πολίτες μας και τους μαθητές, γιατί σε 8 χρόνια που θέλουμε να πιάσουμε στόχο, οι περισσότεροι αυτή τη στιγμή μαθητές θα είναι και αυτοί ενήλικες, κανονικότατα, θα καταναλώνουν, θα κινούνται, θα εργάζονται. Θέλουμε να είναι οι ambassadors, θέλουμε να είναι αυτοί οι οποίοι θα πρεσβεύουν και θα διανέμουν το μήνυμα της κλιματικής ουδετερότητας παντού. Συνεπώς, πρωτοβουλίες και έργα όπως είναι το Life Asti που βλέπουμε καταληκτικά σήμερα δεν είναι αποσπασματικές ενέργειες, δεν έτυχαν απλά μιας χρηματοδότησης, υλοποιήθηκαν, έτρεξαν, αποτελούν μέρος μιας μεγάλης συνολικής και συνεχιζόμενης προσπάθειας του Δήμου Θεσσαλονίκης για την ανάσχεση και την αντιμετώπιση του φαινομένου της θερμικής αστικής νησίδας, αλλά και μια συνιστόσα για την προσαρμογή της πόλης μας στην κλιματική αλλαγή. Η προσπάθεια λοιπόν περιλαμβάνεται και βοηθάει, μάλλον αλληλοσυνδέεται και με τις 100 κλιματικά ουδέτερες πόλεις, και για μας τελικά αυτό είναι το ζητούμενο. Όλα αυτά τα προγράμματα να μην μένουν σε ένα επίπεδο θεωρητικό, σε ένα επίπεδο διαπιστωτικό, σε ένα επίπεδο συμπερασμάτων, αλλά να γιώνουν και να ακουμπούν στην καθημερινότητα του πολίτη. Αυτά είχα να πω εγώ. Σας ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ.
Ευχαριστούμε, Αντιδήμαρχε, και ελπίζουμε ότι θα είστε πάντα δίπλα μας, θα μας βοηθάτε, λεφτά να φέρνουμε και να τα αξιοποιούμε για το καλό της πόλης. Για να περάσουμε όσο πιο γρήγορα γίνεται στον επόμενο χαιρετισμό, θα καλέσω τον Αντιδήμαρχο Περιβάλλοντος του Δήμου Θεσσαλονίκης, τον κύριο Ερωτόκριτο Θεατοκάτω, να απευθύνει και αυτός με τη σειρά του ένα χαιρετισμό στους παρευρισκόμενους.
Τα είπε πολύ καλά ο Αντιδήμαρχος. Εγώ θα ήθελα να προσθέσω μόνο ένα. Ότι όχι μόνο ο Δήμαρχος, η Αντιδημαρχία Περιβάλλοντος, η Αντιδημαρχία Οικονομικών, αλλά όλοι μας, πιστεύω, μας ενδιαφέρει η ποιότητα ζωής. Μας ενδιαφέρει το περιβάλλον, να έχουμε καλύτερες συνθήκες διαβίωσης. Εγώ νιώθω την ανάγκη να σας πω ότι όλοι μας πρέπει, όχι μόνο ο Δήμαρχος, ο Αντιδήμαρχος και οι Αντιδήμαρχοι, αλλά και οι πολίτες όλοι, να συμμετέχουμε προς αυτή την κατεύθυνση. Ο καθένας μας να κάνει ένα βήμα παραπάνω από αυτά που είναι υποχρεωμένος να κάνει. Εάν κάνουμε ένα βήμα μεγαλύτερο προς τη σωστή κατεύθυνση, νομίζω ότι θα βελτιώσουμε και τις συνθήκες διαβίωσης της πόλης μας και το περιβάλλον μας θα είναι πολύ καλύτερο. Εμείς από την Αντιδημαρχία μας υποσχόμαστε ότι θα κάνουμε ό,τι είναι δυνατόν καλύτερο. Θα εργαστούμε περισσότερο από όσο πρέπει για να βοηθήσουμε την ανάπτυξη του πρασίνου στην πόλη μας που όλοι το θέλουμε και τις συνθήκες διαβίωσης των συμπολιτών μας. Να είστε καλά και καλή επιτυχία.
Ευχαριστούμε, Αντιδήμαρχε. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sotiropoulos. You can now share your screen. We can now see your presentation. You can...
Perfect. Thank you very much. Now we are the Life IP Adapting GR project, which is actually an integrated project. Its full title is Boosting the Implementation of Adaptation Policy Across Greece, which is what this project does. It actually tries to implement all the policies related to adaptation all over Greece. It is a strategic project. It is coordinated by the Ministry of Environment and Energy, and it has a consortium of 19 beneficiaries coming from the national administration, the regional administration, the local administration, the academic community, of course, and NGOs. The project duration is 8 years. It started in 2019 and it's going to end in 2026. It has a budget of 40 million euros, out of which 8.3 come from the LIFE program, 2.5 come from the Green Fund, which is also a beneficiary of the project, 3.1 from own contribution, and 0.3 from co-financers. If you want to learn more about the beneficiaries and their expertise in the project, you may visit the project website, of course. Now, with this project, everything started in 2011, when the Bank of Greece elaborated the first climate change vulnerability assessment report for Greece. 2 years later, we had the first European climate change adaptation strategy, which resulted to an MOU, which was signed between MEN, AA, the Academy of Athens, and the Bank of Greece. 2 years later, we had the first national adaptation strategy for Greece, which is implemented through 13 regional adaptation plans. Their specifications were determined in 2017, and a year later they initiated their elaboration. So we have the National Adaptation Strategy, which is implemented through the 13 RAPs, the Regional Adaptation Plans, and the project contributes to the implementation of both. The project, you can see here its initiation and when it is expected to end. So it covers the whole first policy cycle. The National Adaptation Strategy has a 10-year duration. It's going to be revised through the project in 2026. And the project will also pave the way for the revision of the regional adaptation plans, which is estimated to start in 2029. So the project contribution to the national adaptation strategy is, first of all, to catalyze the implementation of the first policy cycle, to improve the availability of climate projections and data. I'll show you afterwards what we exactly mean with all of this. To build the capacity and implement adaptation measures all over Greece, concrete adaptation measures, to develop local plans for climate change adaptation, to replicate and provide good practice example of adaptation, which is not easy always to imagine what an adaptation project is, to monitor and evaluate adaptation policies in Greece, to strengthen the adaptive capacity of the stakeholders and the general public, and to coordinate funding for adaptation in Greece. As I mentioned before, it also prepares the passage to the second adaptation policy cycle after 2026, when the national adaptation strategy will be revised, through the update of the report of the Bank of Greece, the review and the revision of the national adaptation strategy, and the recommendations for the revision of the RAPs and the identification of adaptation priorities for the post-2028 programming period. Now, here we can see the objectives of the National Adaptation Strategy and some of the actions of the project which are directly connected to the implementation of those objectives. For instance, at this stage, now that we are talking, we have geospatial climate projection data and maps available for the first time for Greece, which are online. You can find them through the geo portal of the Ministry of Environment and Energy. We have 22 indices and their projections, which were produced by the National Observatory of Athens in collaboration with the Academy of Athens, which are also beneficiaries of the project. And we are developing the first National Adaptation Hub, which is the meeting point for adaptation policymakers and interested parties for Greece. The draft version of the hub will be available within this June, and the final version of it will be available in September or October of 2022. The project also builds capacity, as I mentioned before. We go to all the regions of Greece and we try to train the policymakers, the people that design policies and implement policies at the national, regional, and local level through capacity building workshops, through webinars, and through peer-to-peer visits. And we also exchange good information on climate change adaptation through workshops in order, to enhance the transnational and the EU cooperation. What this project also does is that it provides, as I mentioned before, good practices example. We have 12 pilot climate change adaptation projects and 14 climate change adaptation case studies across the 7 priority sectors of the National Adaptation Strategy. We have for flood risk management, coastal zone management, forest fire prevention, sustainable water management, urban planning and regeneration, landscape, land uses, and archaeological historical sites. We also try to take these good practices and replicate them and transfer them all over Greece and in the EU if this is possible. A unique action of this project is that we also provide climate change adaptation guidelines for landscape and land uses and cultural heritage sites of Greece, which is something that happens worldwide for the first time. A very important action of the project is the monitoring of complementary funds. So we recognize which other funds complement the implementation of the national adaptation strategy and the regional adaptation plans. And we try to mobilize complementary funding and inform the managing authorities on climate change adaptation priorities and needs in order to be able to implement adaptation policies more easily through proper funding. Last but not least, we inform everyone, the students, through educational materials, the general public through a large number of events, and of course, professional groups through a large number of activities. I don't want to take more of your time. If you want to learn more, you can visit the project website or the social media. You can find the project with the name Adaptive Greece, as we like to call it, or you can send a direct email to us in order to give you all the information that you might need. Thank you once again for the invitation, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Sotiropoulos. Mrs. Regini, is he online?
Yes. Hello, can you hear me?
Hello, hello. Yes, we can hear you. So I suppose you can start sharing your screen and present your project.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
I'm trying. Okay. Here I am. Can you see my presentation now?
Yes, yes, it's visible to us.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for this invitation. My name is Gaia Regini. I belong to National Agency for New Technologies, Energy and Sustainable Economic Development, called ENEA. And I'm here talking on behalf of all the partnership of this LIFE preparatory VEGAP project that lasted for 3 years, and it just ended the beginning of May. The GAP is about to perform a holistic approach for quantifying vegetation effect on atmosphere in urban environment. In fact, concerning air temperature and its impact on air quality, and also to quantify the contribution of vegetation ecosystem both as a source and sink of air pollution focused in urban areas. As everybody knows, the interaction of pollutants in the atmosphere is a complex system, and in order to understand this interaction, in the GAP we used the atmospheric modeling systems. The one developed by ENEA, implemented by ENEA in Italy, AMS Mini, and it was applied in 2 cities, in Bologna and Milan, in Italy. And the WRF CMAC atmospheric modeling system developed, implemented by the Università Politecnica di Madrid in Spain, in the city of Madrid. The GAP approach is in line with the air quality plans approach according to the Ambient Air Quality Directive of 2008, and to set the measures to reduce air pollution, of course. So the GAP reveals the effectiveness of vegetation for air quality and temperature, considering the difference between between 2 simulations with actual current vegetation and simulation without vegetation, in order to understand the difference, of course. And these results are illustrated in the WebGIS VEGAP platform, information platform, concerning the temperature and some pollutants as PM10, ozone, and nitrogen dioxide. So we perform two versions of this platform. One is the basic version available for everyone, citizens without registration, and the advanced version for expert person who wants to explore many other maps and results. This is just a glimpse of our results, and in the upper row we have Bologna, then in the center Madrid and Milan. From left to right we have temperature and the pollutants. And the color bar is written, you can read the color bar considering the blue colors as lowering the parameter, while the red colors from yellow to red is increasing the parameter. So for example, if we see in Bologna, we have a cooler effect of the vegetation. Indeed, this is the result of the difference between current vegetation and no vegetation. So we, as expected, in this case, we have a cooler effect of the vegetation. These are other results concerning, this is daily sum, the effect on air deposition and biogenic volatile organic compounds emissions. And you can read the color bar in the same way. So in blue, you have lowering the parameter, and in red, it's improving. We have the BIVOC and then the deposition of the three pollutants under investigation. These results are in form of many maps, many indicators that should be analyzed and discussed in details, of course. And to do that, we have this information platform in form of 5 questions. The basic version is stimulating the curiosity of the user. 5 questions about vegetation, temperature, pollutant concentration, dry deposition, and biogenic emission. Then you can explore other results by register and using the advanced version. And this is the link to our VEGAB presentation. So we have developed this operational framework to evaluate the multiple interaction between vegetation and atmosphere in cities. And we have performed site guidelines useful for high quality plans, stakeholders, and to understand the interaction. This is a summary of the GAP results. We have evidence of a vegetation effect on meteorology and air quality, a framework to assess and visualize the effect of present and future urban vegetation. Indeed, we develop also the scenario vegetation, considering the plans for new urban vegetation infrastructures, and assessment and framework to evaluate the vegetation effects on human and ecosystem Earth through its effect on meteorology and air quality. Moreover, the information platform could facilitate the knowledge and participation of citizens and stakeholders. I here give credits to all the participants to this project from all the partners, and I invite you to join us by exploring the GAP platform. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Rigini. We wish every success to your project. Okay, I'm getting no response. So we have one project left before the break. That is Life Plus a Green Net. And the guest speaker is Dr. Antosa. Is Dr. Antosa online? Okay, I see you raised your hand, so you can begin sharing your screen and present your project. Thank you.
Okay. And Do you see this my presentation? It's okay?
I think you have shared the wrong application.
Sorry, I have some problem, but I resolve. Hannah.
I think you should stop sharing and then share your screen again and select probably the file that you have. Is it a PowerPoint? Or,
Okay.
Yes. Now this is the correct one. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Good morning at all. Life Agrinet is a project that involves two regions, Abruzzo and Marche. And there are some partner, some municipality of the coast of Abruzzo and the Marche region, and one university of Camerino, Res Agraria, Legambiente Onlus are the partner. Life Agrinet aims to adapt the Italian coast of the Adriatic Sea to heat waves and rising temperatures, to respond to the impact of climate change on health and to protect the environment and the economy. Then regeneration and expanding existing urban forest, the urban green system and ecological network of coastal hill connection. This is a project that are the object to regenerate existing coastal pine forest. This is a very interesting aims. Increase the quantity of green space of the coastal area, increase the resilience of the urban environment, develop multi-level and multi-actor governance, and add other object to define a forestry contract with the management, adaptation, and mitigation plans. And the impact supporting tools, the construction, the building tools for the implementation decision to involve scenarios of the green infrastructure designed and implemented by 2030, and management system implemented, and regeneration and microforestation intervention. It's very important to build a networking of project results. There are some policy implications. Life Agrinet intends to contribute of the climate objective with European strategy on adaptation to climate change, European Green Deal, and European Climate Pact. It's important as short terms and long terms of the Life Agrinet is to have a local town planning plans, building regulation and specification of public works of municipality partners. The activity provided for the forestation contract, and very important, the project and the design of plans for the management of the coastal pine woods, and the application of the regulation for the design of green infrastructure in territorial and urban planning plans within the territory of the Abruzzo region. The transferability of the handbook for the design and implementation of the green infrastructure in other Italian coastal contexts and in the Mediterranean area. Thank you for this is a short presentation. The project has begin in the November 2021, and we are started for this project, but the Abruzzo region invest a lot of time and resource in this project, because this project is a very, very important for our policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation.
The LIFE program, the European Union's funding instrument for the environment and climate action, began its journey in 1992. This year, LIFE celebrates 30 years of protecting and improving the quality of the environment. updating of EU climate policy, and raising awareness in environmental issues of EU citizens. There has been 5 phases of the program. During this period, LIFE has co-financed more than 4,600 projects with a total contribution of approximately 6 billion euros. In 2021 began the new phase of LIFE with 4 sub-programs: Nature and Biodiversity, Circular Economy and Quality of Life, Climate Change Mitigation and Adaptation, and Clean Energy Transition. The European Commission, recognizing the program's contribution to the most crucial environmental issues, has increased LIFE funding by almost 60% for 2021 to 2027. It now stands at 5.4 billion euros. LIFE's 30th anniversary celebrates LIFE's 30-year contribution to environmental protection, nature conservation, and climate action. The climate and biodiversity crises are more present than ever, but LIFE projects provide hope and inspiration for future solutions. The world is becoming increasingly urbanized. More than half the world's population today lives in cities, and another 2.5 billion people are expected to join them by 2050. But when large numbers of people congregate in cities, many problems come up, resulting to a deteriorated quality of life. The effects of urbanization and climate change are converging in dangerous ways. Global warming is likely to reach 1.5 degrees Celsius between 2030 and 2052, and approximately 3 degrees Celsius in 2100, based on scientific research. Urban heat islands contribute to higher daytime temperatures, reduced nighttime cooling, and higher air pollution levels. These, in turn, contribute to heat-related deaths and illnesses, compromising human health. Heat islands can also exacerbate the impact of heat waves, which are periods of abnormally hot and often humid weather. Sensitive populations are particularly at risk during these events, as rising temperatures increase rapidly the probability of heat-related deaths. LIFE Asti project targets the urban heat island phenomenon and its effect on human well-being by producing high-resolution UHI prediction and heat health warning systems in 3 Mediterranean cities: Thessaloniki, Heraklion, and Rome. The forecasting products include UHI-related information and thermal bioclimate indices, available on Project Web platform and mobile app. LIFE Asti, funded by LIFE program, has developed and operated an innovative forecasting system aimed at producing and disseminating scientific information to help shield the public from the dangers posed by high temperatures and to raise public awareness. The partners participating in the LIFE Asti scheme, coming from the field of research and public administration, provide the necessary know-how and infrastructure for the optimal quality of the services offered. The results and deliverables produced in LIFE Asti assist decision makers to design new instruction services and better urban climate adaptation plans for the protection of human health and local environment. The short-term and long-term adaptation tools support local authorities and stakeholders to plan their strategies towards a sustainable management of urban environments in a changing climate. During its lifetime, we have built a wide network of stakeholders and organized working tables, training sessions, and workshops to bring decision makers and local authorities together. All these cross-cutting themes will be presented and discussed during the LIFE Asti final conference, which will be held both in person and online on May the 19th. We hope that you can join for this celebrational event, and you are all warmly welcome.
So in this regard, I will then ask Professor Michalopoulos to begin with this talk. Is he online?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Michalopoulos. You may share your screen and proceed with your presentation.
Okay. Share contact. Good. Okay, I don't know, can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Now should be okay.
Yes, we can now see your presentation. You may proceed.
Okay. Okay. First of all, good morning. Thank you very much for the invitation. Initially, I was planning to be here with you, but as you see from the picture behind, I'm not even at my office. Hoping the connection is good, and I will try to give you a very short snapshot for the Climpact, which is the Greek initiative for climate change. Okay, this is full screen. So I'm Nikos Michalopoulos. I'm Director of the Institute of Environmental Research and Sustainable Development of the National Observatory of Athens, and I'm also Professor of Environmental Chemistry at the University of Crete. So I will start with something that everybody knows. It's well perceived that, and this is the outcome of the last IPCC reports, that there is warming of the climate system, and this is unequivocal, and there is a human influence on the climate system, which is really clear. Here you see the increase of the temperature from the 19th century up to today, and you see that there is, everybody knows there is a constant increase of the temperature, reaching on the global basis of the order of 0.7 degrees Celsius. Also, we know that Mediterranean is among the most important hotspots regarding the climate change, and we see this not only and especially what we know also that for the last 30 to 40 years, that the temperature in the Mediterranean is increasing faster comparing to the remaining part of the world by almost a factor of 2. And also based on the various scenarios, this is a scenario from, in the case, for instance, from the, let's say, bad scenario, temperature is expected to rise up to 5 degrees until the end of the century, which is a huge increase for the area. Also, we know that Mediterranean is a crossroad of pollution, crossroads of civilizations, but around Mediterranean, here you can see are the biggest producers of greenhouse gases, which can impact the warming of the area. And what I think which is more, let's say, anxious is that the emissions, although emissions from the European Union are decreasing, and this is good news of the mitigation, the emissions from the neighbor countries, especially the Middle East, are increasing the last year, and it's expecting that until the end of this decade, the emissions from the Middle East, they will be even higher compared to the EU of the 28. And per capita, the MENA area, Middle East, Mediterranean and Middle East, will be number 2 after China in terms of emissions per capita. Taking into account that population around Mediterranean is expected to increase not at the same way at the northern part and in the southern part, and especially, actually, there is a high anthropogenic pressure around the Mediterranean. almost half of inhabitants, half billion of inhabitants, which during summertime, this number becomes easily a factor of 3 or 4 bigger. And that the population is increasing at countries which are not part of European Union or not sign at all agreements like that of Paris, you can easily understand why the situation for the area is expected, in the case of not measurements, to be critical in the next years. And yeah, as I said, there is a strong increase in the population in the southern and eastern basin, with more than half of the population actually living out of Europe. And this number is expected to be even higher until the 2050. Also, we know that the temperature in the area, we have seen the measurements, is not only increasing. This is from the oldest meteorological station of Thessaloniki in Athens, but also what we know is that the number of the hot days since 1860, hot days, we mean the days with temperature above 37 degrees or even 40 degrees, is increased the last 30, 40 years with almost a factor of 3 to 4 compared to the previous years and the previous decades. This is what we know. This is what the various models are saying. This is the probability distribution of the temperature for 3 different decades. This is the case of Nicosia, but similar tendencies expected not only from Nicosia, but also for Athens and all the other areas of the MENA region. You see the mean is increasing every decade, and at the end of the year, it's expected to have temperature at the end of this century. So I expect to have temperature up to 5 to 6 degrees higher during the summertime. And this is among of the issues raised by the recent IPCC report, talking that with the summers will be even temperatures increasing stronger during summertime, and summer is expected to be in the Mediterranean region, continues to also increase until the end of the century. So then what is CLIMPACT? CLIMPACT is the Greek initiative to study the climate change, the climate crisis, and its impacts. The idea is to, first of all, to putting together all the institutes, all the research centers, all the universities working on that subject, and to have a pole with excellence in research. The idea is to produce new knowledge on climate change based on the fact, as I said, that there is a core of Greek scientists which are actively involved on the climate change issues. And also to use the infrastructure that we have measurements, we have current infrastructures. Here I mentioned Panacea or Imiophus, as well as satellite data. So to make use of all this data, to produce databases which will be useful for everybody, and this will help to, they will lead to a more accurate quantification of climate change and its effects. Also, what is among the aims of CLIMPACT is not only bringing together the people, which is something important for countries like Greece, general Mediterranean countries, but also to make an optimization of the existing climate service, to improve the early warning systems, not only the early warning systems, but the early warning systems which are related to the disasters, to the natural disasters, which has to do with the climate, like floods, like fires, and to utilize this new research, the new methodologies, to produce services. This is something that the different organizations need, produce services for the citizen, for the users, for the state, And as I said, among the main aims is a national database. We are working hard on this, and there is a lot of improvements. And the second is to use, to produce information, relevant information, with emphasis on few sectors which are very important, key sectors for the Greek economy, like tourism, agriculture, and civil protection, to help to shield citizens, society, and economy from the effects of climate change. Climate has three pillars. The first pillar is science and high quality data. The second is to understand and to assess the impacts on agriculture, tourism, and energy consumption from various proposed adaptation, mitigation, and also financial impact. And the last one is to production of early warning systems for fire and floods. It's a big effort, and despite the short duration of the project, unfortunately, it will end in a few months from now. I think we did a lot of things. We are expecting now, we are struggling to have an extension and hoping to be successful. Participants, these are just the core participants. We are not a club. It's not a closed club. So we accept people, laboratories, universities working on this subject. And although we started with 11 participants, actually we are almost double this number. We are 19 participants, 20 recently. And there are a lot of other universities or organizations that they contact us and they wish to be part of this initiative. Another, I think, quite important is the dialogue forum, the dialogue with the society. And despite the COVID-19, we were able to organize several forums on agriculture, especially that on agriculture was the first one organized by Aristotle University from the team of Dimitris Melas and Prodromos Zanis, and was extremely successful. We had a second one on tourism organized on Crete, and a third one on floods in Athens by the Technical University of Athens, also very successful. And fourth one on marine environment, and we close a few days from now with the impacts on climate change on air quality and health, and this will be organized in an island of Kythera, beginning of June. And here, just to say a few words for all this forum, because I think all these fora were very interesting and very important to show the impact of climate change on the different sectors. And just to say a few words, for instance, for the impact of climate change on tourism. For the importance of tourism, I think everybody knows how important is this sector for Greece. Just keep only these two numbers on your, pay attention to these two numbers. There is tourism for Greece contribute to roughly 30% of the GDP of the country. Almost the same amount of employment. And for regions like Crete or Ionian Islands or South Aegean, contribute, especially for the two last one, 70 or almost 100% of the GDP of these destinations. So you think how important for several areas of Greece tourism is. And this is what we know that in the coming years, in the case of non-measures, although this is for a medium risk scenario, temperature, the number of hot days is expected to increase at all Greece. At the tourist destinations, fortunately, this increase will be smaller, that even at the islands or the central Greece temperatures, the number of hot days, it's expected to increase by almost 1 month. And also the case of and the change for the whole Aegean will be, especially for the period, will be quite important. Also, the impact of the thermal risk, the number of tropical nights with a temperature higher than 20 degrees Celsius, it's expected to increase even further, almost 50 days per year, which is a huge number. Just to give you an idea, that last year we had the record of nighttime temperature in Athens for the last 160 years during the heat wave. Night temperature, so minimum temperature, was 32 degrees. So you can understand how important this could be for the thermal comfort, this association with the tropical nights. And and this goes the discussion with the people working on this the touristic center, that there is touristic activities, that there is definitely a new urgent need for adaptation, and have to develop a high demanding strategy. And there is actually a big uncertainty on the types of service which are appropriate to these new climate conditions. And with that one, I would like to thank you for your attention and for the invitation.
Thank you, Mr. Michalopoulos. It was a very interesting presentation and alarming at the same time. Although I like the term tropical nights, I know that we should not become very familiar with it and do anything we can do to avoid it. Thank you very much once again, and we look forward to a collaboration on behalf of Thessaloniki as well at some point in the future.
Okay.
Since we started the invited talks session, I will now ask Dr. Amanatidis to share his screen and present his talk.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but we do not see the PowerPoint yet. If there's a problem, okay, we now see your screen.
Very good. Thank you very much. Is everything okay? Good morning from Brussels. I'd like to thank the organizers of Life Asti for this kind invitation. I will speak today about the European Green Deal and how Europe would like to reach climate neutrality by 2050. So first of all, I would like to say that Europe plays a key role as far as concerning climate change internationally, but also in Europe has the competence to act based on the principle of subsidiarity on environmental policy, particularly on climate change. So it's considered that it's better to handle this complex issue at a European level rather than individual states, member states to act on this issue. Europe has been a pioneer model for countries all over the world. One example about the role of Europe is the fact that the European Environmental Council already agreed in 1996 to limit global average surface temperature rise to below 2 degrees Celsius, above pre-industrial levels. Only 20 years later, this became an international global goal. as part of the Paris Agreement. The European policies brought down the share of EU global CO2 emissions from 19.7%, below 20% in 1990 to less than 9% in recently in 2019. And also that Europe play a key role in reaching such a, let's say, international ambitious agreement in the Paris Agreement and bringing the other countries all together in this agreement, which is the vision of the European Union. First of all, a sustainable future for both people and the planet. Europe handles the climate change and as an existential threat. Parliament even voted that we are under an emergency situation. Europe is not only, let's say, make pledges about targets, etc., but implements really legislative actions to implement the Paris Agreement. This is what I will present you today. And the aim is, as said, to reach carbon neutrality by 2050. Europe also is aiming to achieve all 17 Sustainable Development Goals by the United Nations. And another issue that I would like to bring is that Europe is not considered this as let's say, an environmental motivation, but also considers climate policies to increase its competitiveness and achieve growth. The European Green Deal is a key policy for Europe. For those that are following 70 years of European Union history, compare the European Green Deal with the establishment of euro in 1999 or the single market in 1993. So the overall aim is transforming the EU economy for a sustainable future. And this covers not only climate targets, but also how to modify the way that we operate. For example, supplying clean, affordable, and secure energy. The whole industrial policies are revisited. And also, as far as concerning waste, is considered quite a flagship activity called circular economy, so nothing to go to landfills, etc. Building renovation, the effective use of resources, zero pollution in air, water, and soil, preservation of ecosystems, biodiversity. Another important activity and legislative action is the so-called farm to fork, so a fair and healthy food system. And last but not least, the mobility aspects, mobility emissions from mobility continue to increase. So this is also addressed under the European Climate Deal. Overall is to leave no one behind. The just transition, financing areas, regions, and that they are suffering from this transformation. The Western Macedonia and Greece is a typical example from abandoning lignite and coal. And overall, the European would like to maintain its leading role worldwide. The motivation for all these actions, I mean, is quite obvious. We would like to see a better future for the future generations. You see various impacts that are happening since we are discussing about urban heat island in Asti. A recent study by the Peseta project calculated that annual deaths from heat waves may reach 90,000 per year, to be added to those premature deaths from air pollution. Severe economic impacts, but also particularly in Greece, and other places all over Europe, were suffering from floods, etc. The European Green Deal is centered around the European population, the well-being and health of citizens. The overall aim is, as I said, clean air, water and soil, healthier food, less pesticide and fertilizers, better transport, better health for the future generations, and also environmental friendly products in our shops. Coming back to the legislative actions, there is an amazing number of legislative actions that are being proposed by the European Union. Probably one most important and symbolic is the fact that what we are aiming, as I said, is not only pledges, but is a law. And this is the European Climate Law, which is makes the carbon neutrality, bring the carbon neutrality in this legislative action, and also the intermediate target of 55% by 2030. There is also a completely new strategy on adaptation, and the most flagship, let's say, activity is the Fit for 55, where a big number of legislative measures have been proposed already in July 2021 and are currently negotiated in the European Parliament and together with the European Council, the member states. Let's make a little bit throwback to the previous actions of Europe to show. I would like to show you the consistency in what Europe is proposing. I was deeply involved in the climate negotiation in 2008 in the European Parliament when the Commission proposed the famous 2020-20. This was considered extremely ambitious. Europe overall succeeded to bring down the emissions already by minus 24% in 2019. This became later on, because of the pandemic, minus 31. Also, the target for the renewable energy was achieved, and also the energy efficiency target was quite closely approached. In 2014, prior to the Paris Agreement, these targets were brought to minus 40, 32, and 32.5, and as part of the Green Deal, minus 55, 40, and 36, 39 for finally primary energy consumption in 2030. Because of the war in Ukraine, yesterday actually, the European Commission proposed additional measures, and among them is the reinforcement of the renewable target to 45%, which is trying to accelerate the implementation of the renewable directive and somehow use internal energy sources, the sun and the wind, for energy production. This transparency shows the numerous legislative proposals as part of the Fit for 55 package. You can see that different aspects are considered there: emissions from cars, emissions from aviation and ships, maritime emissions, land use, forest strategy. But what I would like a little bit to give a little more emphasis is this new measure, which is called Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, to avoid carbon leakage. So there is a new tax which is being debated at the moment, how to tax products that are entering the European Union coming from countries that they don't have a similar ambitious climate change policy. So to avoid that European industries are going abroad to produce there and bring them cheaper back in Europe. This is an overall graph that shows where Europe was in 1999 concerning greenhouse gas emissions and where we would like to go in 2050. You can see in the middle of here the effect of the pandemic. Europe is decreasing its emissions, and in the gray line you can see where Europe could go with the existing policies and where Green Deal, the orange line, would like to bring us in 2050, together with some carbon removals by natural and technological ways, could achieve this climate neutrality by 2050. This graph that I show you from sixth assessment report of IPCC, it's a summary of the global the comparison of global emissions under the 1.5 scenario of IPCC. You could see in the black line the historical emissions that are still increasing at the global level, and where the overall emissions need to go by 2050, 2060 to zero in different scenarios to achieve the 2 degrees Celsius, 1.5, and even below 1.5. It looks really a very ambitious target, particularly for countries that they don't follow such a strong climate policies. And you can see the pledges, the NDCs, the nationally developed contributions, which is the red part, and you see that are not enough to bring down the global temperatures. Of course, the hope dies at the end, but these various scenarios bring us rather to even that all of these policies will be implemented to 2.7 degrees Celsius, and if everything is implemented properly, eventually under an optimistic scenario can go just below 2 degrees Celsius. Of course, such a transition to low carbon economy needs significant financing, and already the multi-annual financial framework program agreed to spend 30% of the overall budget to climate actions. The same is also for the Recovery and Resilience Facility as part of the financing the following day from the pandemic, and there is 37% expenditure related to climate. The Just Transition Mechanism, which goes entirely 150 million public and private fund oriented for climate affected areas. You can also, among the various financial instruments, you can see also the research tool, the Horizon, with 80.4 billion euros and 35% set aside for climate-friendly technologies. I'm closing my presentation by showing key messages from these European climate policies. Of course, climate change for us is happening and is attributed to human activity, as the scientific community describes through the IPCC and not only. And there are, of course, significant effects in human and the planet. There is a need for rapid and decisive action to cut greenhouse gas emission to bring the temperature below 2 degrees Celsius. Decarbonizing the economy will bring lower air pollution levels and have benefits also for climate change mitigation. Achieving climate neutrality goal requires massive investment and an unprecedented transformation all sectors of economy. As Europe is only a small fraction now of the global emissions, global leadership needs to bring also international partners to such ambitious targets through trade and diplomacy, climate diplomacy. And finally, a message for the scientific community that has an important role to play to generate new knowledge and countering misinformation on climate change impacts, on factors increasing vulnerability, and on the effectiveness of strategies dealing with adaptation and mitigation. I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Amanatidis. Let's hope that all the proposed measures will assist us in reaching the goal of neutrality that was set, especially us as a city, now that we are part of the EU missions. vision of 100 climate neutral and smart cities.
Can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can see it perfectly.
Okay. Good morning. Sorry for this problem. Okay.
No, let me. We apologize because there was a slight change in the program, so everyone can get connected due to the time misunderstanding. So please proceed. Thank you.
Okay. So you can see the presentation. No.
Yes, we can see your presentation. You can proceed.
Because in this moment I cannot hear you anyway. I go on and please stop if you don't see or don't understand me. Okay. So my presentation will be on health adaptation and mitigation action for climate change in Italy. In Italy, we started at the beginning of 2000 with adaptation system at national level. And in Italy, like in other Mediterranean countries, extreme events are very frequent, and exposure to heat waves occur every year. And we are, like other countries, one of the most vulnerable areas to climate change. And in Europe, the number of hot days is expected to increase, and especially are increasing in Southern Europe, and Italy, like Greece, are two of the countries involved. So to be ready to contrast this exposure is very, very important. So we are thinking about both adaptation measures that are able to reduce the impact of climate change on health, like, for example, to use heat prevention plans, and we'll see what we have in place in Italy, but also we say something about mitigation or the action to reduce the greenhouse emission, and what are we doing is in this moment less than we could do to reduce these exposures. And about adaptation, the core elements that should be in place are identified by the WHR. So we need site-specific warning system, and your project is specific on this topic. But we need also information campaign to general population, but also we need to identify a risk, high-risk group. The preparedness of the health and the social care system is one of the main objectives. And also in Italy, a focus was in the identification of vulnerable subgroups. And also we have a real-time surveillance system. We'll see about that. And also some other intervention like reduction indoor heat exposure, long-term urban plane are the element identified by WHO. This is our system, what we have in place. So we developed during these years heat warning system for the city level, and this system involved about 30 cities in Italy, the biggest cities. We have, like I told you, a monitoring system to evaluate the impact of temperature, and we use as an indicator daily mortality. So we have a rapid mortality surveillance system on daily mortality. And also in this way, we try to evaluate every summer the impact on health. And also the system include the prevention response. So we develop guidelines we review guidelines every year. We identified methods to define susceptible subgroups, and then there are the prevention action at local level, and we made every year a survey to identify how they develop prevention plan and adaptation measures for each city in the system. This is our
Dr. Michelozzi, sorry
Yes.
for interrupting you. I think we're not seeing the proper slides. Maybe they're not changing for some reason. Have you tried,
I don't know why, because I'm saying the right, so you don't see the right, okay. I don't know why.
May I suggest you stop sharing your screen and then reshare your screen and proceed from the proper slide then, so.
I can share again. Do you see now?
Yes. Thank you. You may proceed.
The map of Italy is the right. You can see the map of Italy. No.
Yes, we can see the map of Italy. I think now it's okay.
Okay, so this is our mortality surveillance system at national level to monitoring the impact of heat waves, and now it is extended to 50 cities in Italy. And this you can see here as an example the time series of mortality at national level, and you can see the impact of COVID, for example, in the last year in Italy. And I don't understand, but there is something wrong with the slide. You can see my slide.
We still see the map of Italy.
Okay.
If you.
And now the second is always on mortality surveillance system. An example, during COVID, we were able to use this system developed for heat waves to estimate the increase in mortality due to COVID epidemics. And the Italian heat prevention plan was developed, as I told you, from starting in 2004, and we developed the guidelines, and you can find all the information on the Ministry of Health site. And this is an example of the warning system and the daily bulletin for each cities. And we started with this system every year in May until...
Dr. Michelozzi, it seems that the problem is recurring. Maybe if you do not use full screen, try again, stop sharing and reshare, and not now it has changed. So you move to the next slide. Yeah. Sorry again for interrupting.
It's very difficult to make a presentation in this way. I don't understand what happened. Anyway. There is something wrong in the system, because I don't do anything wrong. So you see something now.
Yes, we'll see another slide.
And this slide is about the warning system and daily our bulletin in each city. And this is an example of how we made the surveillance of mortality during the summer. You can see we have a system in each city, and we observe the temperature, the time series of temperature every day, peaks in mortality, for example, and we can observe when we observe also a peak in mortality. And these are several examples in the different cities. And in this way, we are able to estimate the number of alert days. For example, in this graph, you can see in the north, in the center, in the south of Italy, the number of alert days, level 2 and 3. And you can see the excess of mortality we observed at the same in the different years. So the year with the highest number of alert was 2019, but we are observing an increase in mortality, in the excess of mortality during summer in the last 3 years, probably due to an interaction with COVID epidemics, but we have to explore more in details this result. These are several examples of brochure and prevention. For the prevention we develop at the national level, and these brochures are for specific susceptible groups, for example, for children or for workers. In Italy, we are developing a warning system specific for workers or for pregnant women, for example. So are all different subgroups, and we give specific advice for each group. And about in mitigation, we have several action in place, but what we can do as public health people, we can estimate co-benefit associated to specific intervention. And for example, this year we public a national report, and we estimate, for example, the number of deaths attributable to air pollution, for example, PM10 or PM2.5, and how many deaths can be avoided if the level of this concentration of these pollutants was reduced. And this is the example of air pollution. For example, we know that we have the new guidelines of WHO for PM2.5 now is 5 microgram cubic meters, and if we can see that in Italy we have air pollution PM10, PM2.5 over this threshold, and this produces an excess of about 20,000 and more in death, which is about the 8% of the total mortality in Italy. And this is an example of how you can produce the impact assessment, and this can be related to different scenarios of air pollution reduction. And also the same you can do for temperature. This is the relationship between temperature and daily mortality in the Italian cities. In black, there is the curve of the dose relationship curve, and you can see in green the relationship for each cities, we use this dose response relationship to estimate the impact of temperature on mortality. And for example, we estimated the number of attributable deaths associated to high temperature in Italy in 1 year are about 15,000 deaths. And this is about the 2.3% of total deaths in Italy. And also in this case, this data can be very useful to estimate how many deaths you could avoid reducing the exposure of the population. So we think that public health have an important role. We made the surveillance and monitoring and the risk communication, but also it is very important to act to improve the capacity of health system to adapt to climate change. So every year we develop a new intervention, but also it is important, and this is less, we have to make more about that and to promote lifestyles in cities and to reduce carbon footprint, and to help to identify cross-sectoral action to reduce greenhouse emission, and of course to promote research and health education. And sorry for all that, for the presentation that was not so linear. Anyway, I hope you could understand something about our work.
Hello. I will start with a brief overview of the project. Okay, we are living in a rapidly urbanizing world, and the facts are actually quite impressive. In the map, you can see the number of cities that exceeded 750,000 inhabitants in 1950. So let's see how this developed in the next decades.
Let me check if the mic is on.
Okay. Okay, I start by removing the mask, right? Thank you. Okay, so let's go back again. The map shows the location of the cities that exceeded the threshold. These are large urban agglomerations in 1950. And this is how it changed in the next decades. We see quite an impressive change in the number of cities that exceeded the threshold. These are the statistics. In 1950, only 30% of the global population was urban. A few years ago, we exceeded 55%. And by the middle of this century, I expect that this will raise to 68%. We have to mention that these numbers are quite higher in the developed countries, mainly in North America, but also in Europe. And just to mention that Greece is almost at 80%. The urban heat island is a phenomenon that occurs in the medium-sized and the large urban agglomerations. It expresses the fact that we all experience that the cities are generally warmer than the surrounding areas. And this is attributed to several factors. What is well known is the anthropogenic heat release. waste heat from many human activities contribute to higher temperatures. This is obvious, at least during the winter period, where the heating of the buildings contributes to release of heat to the atmosphere. But also during the warm period of the year when cars, vehicles in general, but also air conditioning contribute to heat release to the atmosphere. In addition to this, we have a lot of other impacts that are related to the geometry of the buildings and also the properties of the urban surfaces. These are two satellite pictures showing the temperature distribution in Milan and Madrid. The period is June 2019, during a period of a heat wave. These are taken early in the morning. I will show you later that this is the time of the maximum urban heat island intensity. And we can clearly see that in the cities are warmer than the surrounding areas. It's also worth to see that the spatial distribution of temperature is quite complex. We are not talking about one temperature for the city or one temperature for the surrounding areas, but we are talking about a mosaic which is quite complicated. These results show the urban heat island in the area of Thessaloniki. I apologize for the Greek titles, but I will give a brief explanation. In the upper left one, we can see the seasonal variation of the urban heat island. We compare one station in the center of the city and one station at close to the airport of the city. And we see that during the entire year, the city exhibits a higher temperature, which is something between 2 and 2.5 degrees Celsius. The period with the highest differences is spring. In the lower right part, we can see the diurnal variation of the urban heat island intensity. And this is a quite interesting picture because we see that the maximum intensity is observed during nighttime, where it actually reaches almost 4 degrees Celsius. During the daytime, this is diminishing, and at early afternoon hours, we can see a very small difference between the city center and the reference station. That is in general lower than 1 degree Celsius. Why do we care? Actually, we know that temperature has a large impact on many activities, but our most important concern is about human health. You can see some results produced by Francesca De Donato and Matteo Scorticini, showing the relation between apparent temperature in Thessaloniki area and mortality. We see that when the temperature exceeds a threshold of about 30 degrees, the risk for mortality is increasing. And actually, when we go up to 36 degrees, the risk for mortality is almost 50 or 60% higher than the reference period. This is documented in many heat wave episodes that Europe experienced during the last few decades. I would say that the cumulative number for the period, for the 20 years period 1998 to 2017, is that we estimate that more than 166,000 people died due to extreme temperatures. The urban heat island and the temperature in general have a large impact also on energy consumption. This is a well-known fact that the maximum energy consumption, electricity consumption more specifically, occurs during summertime. You can see some results for New Orleans in the United States. You see that the minimum consumption is in the range of about 18 to 27 degrees Celsius. When the temperatures are lower, the energy load is increasing, and this is, of course, due to the need for heating. But this increase is even more dramatic when you go towards higher temperatures. We know that the usage of air conditioning puts a lot of pressure on electricity demand and in general results to many problems. Many of you remember that in the previous decades we even had problems with the stability of the network in Greece because of the very high consumption during days with high temperatures. Sorry. Well, Life Asti project was supported by the LIFE program in order to help contributing towards adaptation to the problems that I mentioned before. In general, there are two countries involved in Life Asti, namely Greece and Italy. And the two primary locations where we apply model results are Thessaloniki and Rome in Italy. During the course of the project, we also added Heraklion and Pavlos Melas, and recently also Civitavecchia in Italy. The initial duration of the project was 3 years, but due to delays that were associated with the pandemic, we got a 1 year extension. So the project is expected to finish in August 2022. There are 6 beneficiaries involved in the project. 2 of them are research institutes that are mainly focused on technical work, mainly the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki and Institute of Atmospheric Sciences and Climate of the National Research Council of Italy. 2 public bodies, namely Municipality of Thessaloniki and Azienda Sanitaria Locale Roma 1, and 2 private companies that also contribute to specific topics of the project. I will show you a few of the results. First of all, this is a schedule of the system that we developed within the frame of this project. We used existing databases because we always have to form a solid background using existing knowledge and existing data. But we also try to contribute in improving these databases. And especially in terms of observations, we did, well, a major improvement, I would say, especially in Thessaloniki, where we improved the monitoring network that observed temperature and humidity in the city, but this is also something that happened in Rome. However, the core of the project is based on the usage of numerical models. We employed a numerical model, a meteorological numerical model, WRF, with a high resolution in the urban areas that we target. The resolution, the original resolution is, the native resolution is 2 kilometers. However, as I showed you in the satellite pictures, we expect a higher variability even at the smaller scales. So we cannot rely on 2 kilometers resolution. We had to downscale to a finer resolution, and we did this using statistical methods to go down to 250 meters within the urban areas. This was combined with a heat health warning system. that produced information on impacts on health. And all the results were shown on an internet platform that is accessible by the public. For those who wish to install an application in their mobile phone, there is also this possibility, so they can get the information on the mobile phone. Well, in addition to short-term forecasting, as I told you before, our forecasting system produces results for 4 days. We made an assessment also on the impact of future climate change on the urban heat island. I will show you just some indicative results about Thessaloniki. I have to mention that in the presentation that will follow, people that worked in the project will present in more detail the results of the project. So I will just give you a very brief overview. And you see the impact in the area of Thessaloniki. We made some simulations about the present climate, the climate in the middle of the century, and also the climate at the end of the century. You can see at the bottom of the plot that we refer to the periods 2006-2010 as present climate, 2046-2050 as middle of the century, and 2096-2100 as the end of the century. We put some thresholds for defining heat wave days. The thresholds, these were taken from the literature. The maximum temperature of the day should exceed 37 degrees Celsius, and the average temperature of the day should be higher than 31 degrees Celsius. And what you see is really impressive. We see that at present climate, the number of heat wave days per year is less than 3 days per year. This is expected to increase to 5 days by the middle of this century, and to go to over 30 days by the end of this century. This means that we have a tenfold increase by the end of the century. Luckily, the intensity of the urban heat island is not going to be stronger in the future. Temperature will be stronger, that's for sure, higher, sorry. But the difference between the city and the surrounding areas will not increase. It will remain approximately the same. And as I told you before, this will be explained by more details by our colleagues. As I told you before, the results of the project are accessible via the web platform of the project. You can see the address in the left, and also you can download an application if you want to see the results on your mobile phone. So we currently have applications for Android and Apple. By concluding this introductory presentation, I would like to thank all people that contributed to the development within this project, and mainly the young researchers that actually added a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of very good research work. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Melas. So we try to keep up with the schedule. The next presenter is Dr. Kondos, who will present the meteorological modeling of urban heat island effect. So you may sit and start presenting. Thank you again, Professor Melas.
Where am I? Here. Here. And sharing πώς κάνω. Στο το Webex. Hi everyone, I'm Serafim Konos and I will make a brief presentation of the urban heat island intensity forecasting system, and we will see an application of the system itself for the last August, for the previous August. Please. Okay, nice, yeah. And then we'll summarize what we'll find. Professor Romel has told you more about the system. We use a WRF model coupled with a single layer urban canopy model, which essentially takes into account all the features of the urban fabric. Then we at 2 kilometers for the two regions, Thessaloniki and Rome. Then we downscale with a machine learning technique down to 250 meters, and then we produce a bunch of products related to urban heat island. The domains that we utilize are, first of all, one large domain at 18 kilometers resolution. And why so large? Because we want for our forecasting system to be transferable and replicable, and to be able to represent the transport of the hot air masses towards our region. Then, with a nested way, we go to the Eastern Mediterranean, and then at 2 kilometers for Thessaloniki and Rome. And the UHI forecasting system products are meteorological, like temperature and relative humidity. Some of them related to the urban heat island effect, a few bioclimatic indices, and energy consumption. We have constructed our UHI forecasting systems, and the first thing we must do is to evaluate it. We evaluated at 250 meters the temperature and relative humidity for the reference year of 2015. What we can see from the index of agreement, it's a statistical metric which gives essentially the overall performance of the system. For both Rome and Thessaloniki, we can see good performance from our modeling system. So we go in action and the application of the USI forecasting system during the last August, where we had two heat waves. One heat wave in early August struck Greece, and as the Greek National Meteorological Service tweeted, it was one of the worst heat waves of the last 40 years. And in the mid of August, near mid of August, Italy had a heat record and a strong heat wave where it also they gave it a name, Lucifer. During these days, near 11 to 15 of August, that was a heat wave that struck Italy. But why that happened? You can see here in early August the transfer of air masses as transported from the Western Africa towards Greece, and that's the first heat wave. While during near mid of August, you can see here a strong anticyclone is formed, bringing a hot air consistently towards Italy. What we see concerning the evolution of the maximum temperature. Actually, what you see here is for Thessaloniki at Tapirio and for Rome at Ciampino that as the heat wave arrives, reaches the cities of Thessaloniki and Rome, the maximum temperature can reach up to 40 degrees. And we see, relative to the pre-heat waves conditions, a difference of almost 10 degrees. What we had 1 week before and what we had during the heat wave. But how much the urban heat island effect contributes to these temperatures? We can see it through the urban heat island intensity, which is essentially the difference between the temperature over the urban areas minus the temperature of the closest rural area. For the two cities during the two heat waves, we can see, first of all, that we have a contribution of 5 degrees for both cities. That's the first one. But we can see that different areas are affected for the different cities. For example, in Thessaloniki, you can see that the maximum UHI intensity appears on the eastern part of Thessaloniki. While for Rome, it's mainly over the central part of Rome. And you can see something else also. That's the third difference that we can see, that during the heat wave, essentially we have the urban heat island intensity appears in different times, meaning that, as Professor Melas stated, for Thessaloniki, we see it during the night, the maximum urban heat island intensity. There's something really peculiar with Rome and interesting because it's at noon, which might be seem contradictory with what Professor Mella said, but there are articles and works that indicate that might be also sometimes sometimes might this be true. And why this happened, we see this difference because we have different urban fabric densities, we have different topographies, and we have different, and because of the proximity from the sea and the coastline, okay? And actually, depending, that's the added value. Here you can see the added value of the Life Asti project because we see different results from for different cities, which means that depending on the city, different mitigation and adaptation strategies might be needed. And we also provide the means and the information where we should expect the differences and the maximum effect and when. Another parameter that is interesting is the cooling degree days, which why? Because it is essential for the energy consumption. It's the essential information for the energy consumption. For example, for the energy consumption from air conditioning. I show you here the case for Rome. For example, before the heat wave, at 5th of August, which is the normal summertime conditions, and during the heat wave, at the peak of the heat wave. What we see here that we have, first of all, you can see clearly the effect of the urban fabric. Before the heat wave, we have a difference between urban and rural areas by 2 degrees, while during the heat wave, we have a difference on 5 degrees, which is in accordance with what we saw from the urban heat island intensity. The other thing is the change, the relative change before and during the heat wave. We have an increase of 100, it's almost twice the magnitude of CDD, the increase during the heat wave, which is translated to almost tripling of the energy, of the expected energy consumption during the heat wave, relative with what we have under normal summertime conditions. The next one is about the climatic indices, which would give us the relative kind of relative impact on human health. And we see here the Universal Thermal Climate Index. This is essentially an index which shows kind of thermal comfort of the people. Here, for both heat waves and cities, we see strongly the urban heat island effect. And just understand what we see. Every color here represents a certain category of stress. For example, on the color bar, if you see, the green is no stress, and the very dark, the dark red is the extreme heat stress. And you can see here for both areas that while on the rural areas, the heat stress is strong, it's on the category of strong heat stress. Over the urban areas, because of the urban fabric, we have extreme heat stress, and we also have some recommendations about this. And last but not least, I will show you the heat health warming system results, but with the fourth forecasted day. As Professor Melas told you, we are making a 4-day forecast. Why we care about the fourth forecasted day? Because we want an accurate early prediction system in order to be able to give time to the policymakers, stakeholders, and the citizens to prepare themselves. And what we see here for Thessaloniki and Rome is actually the successful prediction of the arrival of the two heat waves before 4 days before they come. Also, I want to stress this. It's not only because we predict accurately the temperatures over the areas, but also because of the successful performance of the heat waves, for which our partner Francesca De Donato from Deswell will tell you more. And let me summarize what we have done. We have developed a high-resolution, accurate operational UHI forecasting system, which we are able to transfer and replicate to other cities. We have seen the practical application of the system, which means what kind of information can give us this system and to help the policymakers and stakeholders. And what's next? Of course, the continuation of the system, and also we intend to implement and combine the urban heat island effect with air quality, and to combine and merge these two. That's from me. George?
Thank you, Dr. Kontos. So there will be no questions for now. None. We have planned them all at the end, but let us continue with the presentations, and we'll see what time is left then. So, following Dr. Kontos is Dr. Kepas. So, Dr. Kepas, please come to the microphone. So, Dr. Kepas now will present its CISA.
Thank you. Hi all. So I'm working in the research group of Professor Dimitris Melas, and I'm going to present you just a small part of the very interesting results arose from the C4 action of the Life Asti project. So firstly, let's have a brief look of the objectives of this action, which focuses on the impact of the future climate on the urban heat island effect, including an assessment of possible adaptation plans for the cities of Thessaloniki and Rome. So there are actually, the objectives fall into two sub-actions, I would say. The first one, which is a study and an analysis of the present and future climate of Thessaloniki and Rome, including an analysis of the urban heat island effect. And the second one, which is a bit shorter and focuses on the study of the impact of possible green interventions on the urban microclimates of the two cities in the future. But first of all, let's understand what are the reasons that our cities experience and will experience increased heat stress at the present and in the future. So the first reason that actually affects the entire planet is the global warming due to the increasing emissions and concentrations of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. So actually this has an impact in the entire planet and in our cities as well. But the other reason is the urban heat island effect, which actually affects exclusively the urban areas and occurs due to the differential land use. So this effect occurs due to the differential land use of the urban area compared to other surrounding non-urban areas. And we measure this effect through the intensity, which is nothing more than the difference between the temperature of the urban area minus the temperature of the non-urban surrounding area. So actually, the impact of the urban heat island is added to the impact of global warming. And we could say that our cities, so the climate change in our cities starts from a warmer point, which is determined by the urban heat island effect. Here, we will see very briefly the methodology that we followed, which is actually we deployed the WRF model and we ran it as a regional climate model to produce some simulations, climate simulations for the domains that you can see here in this map. But I will focus on these two red boxes, which include the greater areas of Rome and Thessaloniki. So we simulated the climate of these two areas with a quite high resolution of 2 kilometers for the present, for the period 2006-2010, which is representative to the present climate, and the two future periods of 2046-2050 and 2096-2100 for the end of the current century. And it is important to say and highlight that all of the results that you will see in the next slides refer to the RCP 8.5 scenario, which is the worst case scenario under which we do not make any efforts to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions and concentrations in the atmosphere. And you can see here that actually the worst case scenario is associated with an increase in temperature at the end by 2100 by 3 to more than 5 degrees Celsius in a global scale. Here is an overview of the climatology, if you want, of the summertime period in Rome and Thessaloniki. And at the present climate, you can see that the average summer temperature in Rome is around 26 degrees Celsius and 27 degrees Celsius in Thessaloniki in the central area, in the central urban areas. And you can clearly see the footprint of the urban areas of both cities on summer average temperature. And if we move forward to the end of the century, so in 2100, the average summer temperature increases in this worst case scenario by 3.5 to 4 degrees Celsius in both cities, reaching 31 and 32 degrees Celsius. And it's worth saying that the largest increases are expected during summer, while the the lower increases are expected during winter, which is around 2 to 3 degrees Celsius. Here, in these graphs, you can see actually the anatomy of the urban heat island effect in the cities of Thessaloniki at the top and Rome at the bottom. So we picked these cross sections, which include urban and non-urban areas of both cities. The green sector is actually the northern sector in this graph as well, and the red is the southern sector of the cross section. And along this cross section, we can see the minimum temperatures with solid lines and the maximum temperature with dust lines. And with pink color is the present climate, the average summer temperature, minimum temperature of the present climate, red for the middle of the century, and dark red for the end of the century. The same applies to maximum temperatures as well. At the bottom of the graphs, you can see a color bar, which indicates the land use along these cross sections. And just keep in mind that the gray color indicates the urban area of both cities. So the first thing that we can see is that the urban area has an impact on the average minimum temperatures, and we can see actually that the average minimum temperature is higher over the urban area by 2 to 3 degrees Celsius in both cities. The results are quite similar, I would say. But on the other hand, the land use does not seem to affect the maximum temperature. Sometimes we can see that the average maximum temperature is even lower over the urban areas, but this is actually, as Dr. Kondos said before, depends on the topography and other factors as well. And of course, the atmospheric circulation, the atmospheric conditions in general. And a last thing that we can say about these graphs is that regarding the future climate, we cannot see any difference in the intensity of the urban heat island. And actually, we can realize that through the... Oh, okay. Yeah, so we can see that the lines remain parallel each other, so there is no difference in intensity, but the urban heat island effect will be within a new range of temperatures. Here you can see a discrimination, a categorization that we've done for the grid cells of the two areas. So we picked some urban and non-urban points, and we categorized them into three categories. The one is the coastal, which is actually about the points that are next to the sea. The non-coastal low ground, which are all the points that are in a low altitude but not next to the sea, and the elevated areas that have an altitude larger than 100 meters. And so we tried to see how the number of the tropical nights. We determined tropical nights as nights with the temperature, minimum temperature larger than 20 degrees Celsius. So what we can see, again, the results are quite similar for both cities. And what we can see is that at the present climate, the tropical nights are around 80 for the urban coastal areas, higher than in other classes. And by 2100, this number of tropical nights exceeds 200 nights. So we can understand that this is a really big number. These are number of tropical nights per year. And we can see that the maximum difference is between the urban coastal and the non-urban coastal areas. Regarding the second sub-action of this of the C4 action, we tried to conduct some sensitivity tests, and what we did was to replace urban areas, dense urban areas with urban green and urban park areas. What does that mean? Urban green area is an area with buildings, but also with some vegetated areas like green yards, for example, or trees around the streets. And the urban park areas are areas almost fully vegetated with with just small areas of concrete, for example. And by replacing the urban green grid point of Thessaloniki, for example, and for Rome as well, with urban green and urban park areas, what we found was that the temperature decreases during the night in average by around 1.5 degrees Celsius during the night and early in the morning. And having an urban park within the city is beneficial even during the day when we estimate that there is a decrease of temperature, systematic decrease of the temperature by around 0.3 degrees Celsius. And if we apply all these changes in land use in different areas of the municipality of Thessaloniki, we can see that if, for example, we make it for 30% of the area of the municipality, 30% of urban green, so replacing urban to urban green, we can achieve a decrease of around half a degree. And if we could make it over 70% of the area of the municipality with an addition of 10% of urban parks, we could achieve even more than a decrease more than 1 degree Celsius, which is really important if we consider that the urban heat island is about 2 to 3 degrees Celsius. So it's a quite important number, I would say. Similar are the results again for Rome. I would say that there is a slightly larger decrease of the temperatures when we replace the urban land use. And before closing this presentation, let me introduce another project which acts towards a similar direction in terms of mitigating the footprint of our activities. So excuse me, and the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki participates in this project. The project is called We Care Med, and it tries to identify the carbon footprint of all the processes that take place under the Interreg Mediterranean project activities. And one of the tasks is to develop a tool which will estimate the greenhouse gas emissions generated by its project activities, to suggest guidelines to reduce carbon emissions, to identify the offset measures to compensate carbon emissions, and to evaluate the cost of mitigation measures. So as most of all of the research projects, Interreg Mediterranean projects also have a carbon footprint, And this footprint can be visible in various ways. So, of course, there are needs, heating needs, so we use fuels. There's need for electricity, transportation sometimes. We use water utilities, other materials. We produce printable deliverables. We use equipment and we organize events. So the tool can be implemented to suggest a use of eco-friendly means of transportation, to promote the recycling concept in general, to reduce the number of printable deliverables, and to promote online meetings where and when this is possible. And I'll close with this slide showing the role of the tool, which is to estimate the cost of the emissions to be offsetting from a project. And then this cost contributes to an offset project, which could be, for example, a project of planting trees or producing energy in an alternative way, renewable energy. And then for this mechanism rewards the institutions and the organizations that participate in these projects and in this specific scheme. Thank you very much for your attention, and please follow Asti through social media. We have Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, ResearchGate, and of course there is the platform which is interactive, and you're very more than welcome to visit it. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you, Dr. Kepas. And we shall now quickly proceed to the next presentation. It is Dr. Stefania Argentini. Let me...
Good morning to everybody. I'm Stefania Argentini and I work for the National Research Council of Rome. I will show you what we have done in the frame of this project to increase the measurements point over the city of Rome. And what we like to do is to use all the entities, the station used by different entities on the territory to put together a system which could allow for higher temporal and spatial resolution to have a better assessment of the field of the temperature and other relevant meteorological variable over the city of Rome. And here some motivation, as was pointed by Dr. Melas before. The urban heat island is a very important topic because from this it depends the health, the economic and the environmental of the cities and of the countries, of course. And also why we like to have this high resolution network system is because we want to see which is the relationship between the urban heat island as is measured by using the canopy temperature, the canopy temperatures and the temperature that we have from satellites measurements, which are the ground temperatures. And also, because we think it is important to have in practice a good system which is run and controlled by scientific institutions. So to have, in order to have measurements that are well connected with each other, with the calibrated systems, instrumentation, and measurements that will be put together in one single system, whose data can be used by everybody. The goals are these: provide with this system high quality measurements, to have a good coverage over the city with this sensor, and after to put together different entities measurements. There are also interesting potential regarding studies on meteorology. And to have this net will help in investigating and characterize the meteorological and micrometeorological process occurring over the city and the surrounding areas, and also will help invalidate the boundary layer module of WRF model, for example, or other models, and also to see how the city interacts with the mesoscale circulation, because the mesoscale circulation also may have an impact on the situation over the city. And of course, to study the mechanism which generate the urban heat island, and to see how the heat waves interacts with the urban heat island, because this is not quite clear how heat waves and the urban heat islands interact. And also to test the accuracy of satellites, some satellites techniques. This is a picture in which is illustrated the observation systems, because if I look at this. So in red you have the Meteo Lazio stations. This is a network of stations which is run by citizens. Of course, these stations are basically all the same as that are Davis stations, which are amatorial systems, but which give reasonable measurements. So what we have done in this case is to check all the stations and to put all together in a unique systems in order that we can run and we can check and we can control all these measurements. And of course, we can use these measurements. And to this, we add the ARPA Lazio micrometeorological stations, which are stations put on a mast in which there are many other additional measurements as precipitation, as radiation, and so on. And so in the frame of Asti, we added 8 new stations in which were set in the blue areas that you see on this map. Of course, to have station to set stations in a big city is not just a trivial work, because you need to have authorization and to put and so to have station in the correct place all the time is not a very easy job. So by the moment, we have 37 weather stations, considering all, which are under our scientific control and in the same systems, and we plan in the future to add new stations and to either both by us or to add other stations which are run by private citizens. I go very quickly on this because it's not very important. Here you have a picture of the station and the acquisition system. If you have a specific question, you can ask to Andrea Cecilia, that is our PhD students, and he knows everything about these stations. And here is how all the stations are set. The stations were set on the pavement of the roof of the different buildings. Buildings were generally public institutions or schools, or on the rooftop of citizen buildings. And here, just a picture of these stations look like. We generally put these in a corner so that they are not influenced by the roof. And also, for the pleasure of Andrea and our technicians, we also, in some sessions, we also put some webcams in order to have a continuous monitoring of the state of the sky, and also very nice picture. That's why. And here is how looks like how the our Palazzo Meteorological Station. These are quite standard towers, in which also we have sonic anemometers, and we can estimate turbulent fluxes and other important measurements, which allow us to characterize the micrometeorology of the place. Of these stations, one is in our laboratory in Tor Vergata, which is about 25 kilometers from the city center, and another one is in the opposite side of the city, and the one is just in the city center. So, in the following, just some simple results which we can obtain routinely from these measurements. On the left side, you have the urban heat islands in Rome, how it looks like. The red part means higher temperature. And also you can see on the right side how these different phenomena can be easily illustrated by this kind of real-time graphs. And we have the blue parts indicate the arrival of the sea breeze, while on the right side you have the warmer here on the eastern side of the city. This is Rome, of course. On this graph, what do we have? We have the daily minimum temperatures as a function of imperviousness, the daily maximum temperature, and the daily mean temperatures. This graph is done as a function of imperviousness, and the imperviousness is we associate you see a radius of influence around is single stations, and this the values the imperviousness indicate the level of construction that we have in each around each single station. So imperviousness 0 means that we don't have buildings. Imperviousness 100 means that we have for a radius of about 1 kilometers buildings. What happened? No, can we go? What they have done? Okay, yes. So here we can see that the daily minimum temperature increases with imperviousness. So the more building you have, the more the minimum temperature is high. And you see that the daily mean temperature increases with imperviousness, while we do observe that there is no correlation basically between the maximum temperature and the imperviousness, as was shown by the presentation before. And And here, always using the imperviousness as a coefficient indicating the level of construction in a city. Here we report the temperature as a function of the time of the day. So here we have midnight in the middle, and we have 11 and we have 12. This is during one day. And the lower curves indicate the behavior of the temperature for imperviousness 0, and the upper curves indicate the level of the temperature for imperviousness 100. As we see that the minimum values and the red area represents the intensity of the urban heat island. And so we see that the minimum values of the urban heat island is observed around 10 o'clock in the morning, while the maximum values is observed in the night between 9 o'clock in the afternoon, in the night, and 06 in the morning. And as I said before, it is very important also to know how the urban heat island intensity interacts with the heat waves. And so what we have done here is to make a comparison between the urban heat island diurnal cycle for days without heat waves, that is the green line, in the days in which there were heat waves. And also an important point, especially for cities which are close to the sea or to mountains or to hills, is to see how the local circulation influence the urban heat island. And to have measurements, it is especially important because there are some processes which that being not so well defined, having a lot of stations will allow to study with some details the processes and give indication to model to people which use models in order to have better results. And here, for example, we have the seas on this side. And so here we see how the sea breeze influence the temperature in the city of Rome. The arrival of the sea breeze is at around noon, and so the red line, that is the Corviale stations, the temperature decreases, while in Monte Sacro, which is a station in the city more closer to the city center, remains higher. And also we can see, of course, with the arrival of the sea breeze, we have also an increase of the wind velocity. So also the ventilation, of course, has an important role on all these processes. And this is not related to the urban heat island, but just to show you how this station can provide also useful results for rainfall. These are an episode of rainfall for day 2 December 2018, in which this system provided a measure of the total rainfall over the city. Here there is just a list of the papers that which were done starting from 2018 using these measurements. Of course, the measurements are available for everybody will need in the project or out of the project. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Dr. Argentini. And now Dr. Francesca De Donato will present the results regarding the heat hill warning system.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to briefly present the results from the heat health warning systems that we developed within the Life Asti project as a response measure to climate change and adaptation. So it's been shown slightly before in the presentations, but I will just focus on the health effects. So we've seen this morning how climate change is increasing our average temperatures, more so in the Mediterranean area and within urban areas as shown before. And what we know is obviously it has an impact not only on the environment that we live in, but also on the health of our populations and who is living in the city in a very distinct way. What we can see here is the heat risks related to health in urban areas. On the left-hand side, you see a study conducted on heat waves in which we saw for different cities across Europe that when we consider heat waves, another important aspect is also to consider the duration of the heat waves and the intensity. So it's not only a general heat wave that has an effect, we see an even greater effect on health. In this case, it's in terms of the increase in mortality. When we have very intense heat waves with very high temperatures and that last for more than 3 and 5 consecutive days. So these are important aspects that we know from the epidemiological literature that we have to consider when we're developing heat warning systems for different prevention measures that we then want to put in place. Typically, it's been shown before, but on the right-hand side, you see the temperature mortality association. So if we link the two and carry out different modeling techniques, what we find is this typical U or J-shaped relationship. So when we go to extreme temperatures, be it hot or cold, in the red area you see the extreme high temperatures, we see an increase in the average number of deaths or in the risk of mortality. This is obviously different in different cities, in different contexts, and it depends not only on the climate we're used to live in, but also into the characteristics of the actual population and the response there is in terms of services, health services, socioeconomic services, the economic conditions of the population, how old the population is, the incidence of chronic disease, and all a series of different characteristics that give the population their own risk. Considering these aspects from the literature, we then went on to develop specific warning systems for Rome, Thessaloniki, and Heraklion, which are very different cities. Yes, they're all in the Mediterranean, but they are different by their population characteristics, where they're geographically located, their climate, and also the different conditions that are on the ground, as you can see here. As we saw before, you can see that what we know is that as we have an increase in temperatures on the top red lines, when we see this increase, we have a sudden increase in mortality as well. They run together. So we know there's a short lag between when we are exposed to high temperatures and when we see a worsening of health conditions. And here, health conditions are very severe health conditions. It's death of people. So obviously, there is a direct link between the two. And as we can see, it's different between different cities. Again, I'm showing the association specifically developed within the project. So what we saw for Rome, Thessaloniki, and Heraklion. And again, you can see that where we do see this J-shaped curve, it's very different in the three cities because of the different contexts in terms of the relative risk of the increase in mortality for different exposures to temperatures. Considering maximum apparent temperature, what we can see here is that for Rome, above 36 degrees, we start seeing a significant effect in the risk of mortality. And then for exposures to high temperatures. For Thessaloniki, it's slightly lower temperatures, and for Heraklion, again, it's even smaller, and we see a wider confidence band, meaning that because the numbers of that city are very different compared to Rome, as we'll see later on, the risk and the estimates are less statistically significant. Again, when we want to develop a warning system and why, we've seen, let's say, the environmental side of things, the importance of estimating an urban heat island and extreme temperatures, the importance of having weather forecasts. But what we want when we're developing heat adaptation plans relative to public health and all the measures that can be implemented from a health perspective, we need to consider the different elements defined by the WHO and why these are useful. So essentially, warning systems are really important because it's the action on which we then base all the prevention measures, right? We don't have the services or the resources to survey everyone every day, right? So in public health, because funding is limited, we need to make sure that for those extreme conditions, we are prepared, we know when they're going to occur, and we need to make sure that the actions are modulated around those days. So emergency services like hospitals, response to extreme people that are ill, and things like that are all modulated around the extreme warning days. So what are heat health warning systems? So they consider that association that we saw before around the risks associated to heat, mortality, for example, and exposure to high temperatures, and they use that to then predict and forecast at-risk conditions for the following consecutive days using the forecast that we developed within Life Asti in this context. Every model is based on the city-specific characteristics, so it's not a general threshold for all the 3 cities or for any other city we would like to develop a warning system. And in the case of Life Asti, they added the advantage, or the innovative aspect was that we used high resolution spatial and temporal resolution forecasts, so we could we wouldn't only have a prediction for the whole city of Rome, we could actually disaggregate that and take into account the differences within the city and the risks of the thermal increase that we saw before, as Stefania showed, for example, for Rome or for Thessaloniki, and we could have a differential warning based on the characteristics of the specific areas within a city, which hasn't really been done before. So in terms of data set, very briefly, we collected data from 3 meteorological stations in each city because we needed a time series of data to construct that association with mortality. We collected mortality data as well for the 3 cities, and this is basically to show you the differences. In terms of daily deaths, in Heraklion we have on average during the summer period 2.7 daily deaths. In Rome we have 53. So as you can see, it's very different. So that's the average that happens when we're generally in summer, not because we're exposed to heat, but on average that's the number of people that die on a given day. In terms of temperatures, if we look at maximum apparent temperature, for Heraklion it's maximum temperature. We didn't have a good time series of relative humidity, but on average the temperatures are very similar, around 27 degrees. But when we go and look at the extreme percentiles, we see a variation, and again we see a variation within the summer season, which is very important when we're considering adaptation of people to heat. At the beginning of summer, the first heat wave has been shown to be a higher risk for people compared to in August, when we are acclimatized to being exposed to those summer temperatures throughout the summer. So we see there's a change in the extreme percentiles by month, and our models take this into account. In terms of our predictive model, what we did was we defined a city-specific Poisson regression model, as you can see here. I won't go into the details, but basically the model estimates, given the temperatures, the timing within the season, so the month, and the interaction between temperature and month, and the number of consecutive days, because as I mentioned initially, when we have more days of extreme temperatures, it has a greater risk on mortality. All these factors together would give us an estimate of the mortality we have, considering our time series. We then broke this down into a simple version that we can define when we have a threshold above which we would give a warning. When we have a risk, a low risk was when we had an increase in the mortality between 10 and 20%, and a high risk was when mortality exceeded the expected or baseline number, let's say the average, as I showed you before, by 20%. And as you can see, this is the model for Rome. There is different thresholds for each month. So for example, in May, when we are now, 29 degrees on the second consecutive day will be a level 1 warning, while if we have 30 degrees from the first day, it would be a level 2 warning, meaning there's a high risk of mortality over the 20%. This obviously changes throughout months because I said before we know there's acclimatization and the data confirm this. If we move to Thessaloniki, this is the model, the synthetic model that comes out. These are the levels of warning. As you can see, it's slightly different, obviously, because it depends on the characteristics both of the climatology, and the mortality and the association between the two. The curves were slightly different. And when we go to Heraklion again, slightly different again. But as you can see, there's a graded level of warning again when we go from the beginning of summer to the end of the summer. So what did we do with all this data? Obviously, we defined the models. This is used together with the forecast data that is forecast by the model that was shown initially. We use the thresholds that were defined, and then within the Life Asti platform, we gave a 4-day graded warning for each district within the cities, and these are going to be shown in more detail by the presentation that is going to follow me from our colleagues from GET. In terms of local planning, it's not sufficient to just give a warning. We need to make sure that that warning is attached to a series of different actions, and the actions need to be set up in a local prevention plan. It's really important, as we know, that it's not just the environmental side and forecasting the risk. We need to make sure that all the stakeholders that are involved in a local prevention plan know what the warning means, and they all need to know what should be done. So, for example, emergency services like civil protection, health services need to know what action they should take when a warning is issued in terms of health. Prevention, local stakeholders like health, environmental or social services need to know, again, what they need to do in the different conditions. When there's a level 1, which is a pre-alert, they need to be planning things. When there's a level 2, for example, GPs should be checking up on the high susceptible subgroups, should be going to visit them, making sure they have access to their medication, that they're being assisted in some way and not left alone. What we saw in 2003, the very dramatic heat wave that occurred across Europe, for example, if you remember, in France, there was an increase in number of elderly living alone that died, and they found out very late. No one knew they'd even died because no one had checked up on them, and they could have been saved. So the WHO has very strongly and adamantly shown that if you intervene in time, you can reduce heat-related mortality, but these actions need to be put in place. And again, another important issue we've seen in Italy as well, for example, if you raise the awareness and you make sure people that are at risk, so the most susceptible, know that they are at risk and what they should be doing, and give recommendations for the general public for specific subgroups at risk. It's not only the elderly, we know now from the literature, it's pregnant women, it's small children, it's people with chronic disease. Even COVID is a risk factor related to heat, because the same people that have the more severe conditions of COVID or have had the severe conditions of COVID in the last 2 years are the ones that are at risk also from heat waves. And again, they might be isolated, they might be alone, and no one checks on them. So again, this is an indication of what to do. So the next step in the project is we've developed the models, they need to be integrated in a heat adaptation plan where it isn't still occurring or isn't current. We developed within the project as well information and health recommendations, as I said, specifically for COVID and heat, but also who is at risk and what we can do that can be disseminated throughout the different stakeholders and are available online on our website. And again, this is just to encourage you to go and see the Life Asti application platform or download the app, and you can consult the daily forecasts and see what is happening in your city. And that's everything from me. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Francesca. We saved all the questions for last, so if anyone wants to ask you something, you'll respond then.
Heat waves and extreme heat have a direct impact on health as well as indirect effects. Direct effects comprise mild symptoms like fatigue, heat stress, dehydration, and heat stroke as more severe conditions. Indirect effects comprise the worsening of pre-existing chronic disease, for example, cardiovascular, respiratory, and kidney disease, which can take up to hospitalizations and even death among very frail patients. The introduction of heat adaptation plans and warning systems can help raise awareness on the risk of exposure to extreme temperatures and can also help respond and mitigate the impacts in terms of health.
The urban heat island is a local phenomenon caused by urbanization, which leads to a warmer microclimate within cities than in the surrounding rural. In particular, the urban heat island occurs at night when the temperature difference can reach 6 degrees Celsius. Given that the duration and intensity of summer heat waves is increasing because of the global climate change, it is important to characterize the urban heat island in detail in order to develop mitigation strategies and a forecast system. This is one of the aims of the LifeAsti project, and therefore, by the year 2019, the Rome LifeAsti team developed a dense rooftop weather station network. Such a network, still in expansion, currently has a total of 34 units, including weather stations from Meteo Lazio Amateur Network, taking advantage of the citizen science. Where there was a lack of monitors, the LifeAsti team provided to install new monitors. The weather stations, such as the one you can see behind me, are all the same model, Davis Vantage Pro 2, and are all installed following the World Meteorological Organization siting standards. Each station is provided with the sensors for temperature, relative humidity, wind and rain. A first study conducted on this data by our research team showed that the urban heat island in Rome peaks at midnight with an intensity of 3.4 degrees Celsius, but the maximum observed intensity during 2 summers was of 6.2 degrees.
We forecast the urban heat island intensity with a widely used numerical model. It's called WRF, Weather Research and Forecasting Model, and it's coupled with a urban canopy module to get a better representation of the urban environment itself. In this configuration, the model can forecast a number of relevant atmospheric parameters with a spatial resolution of 2 kilometers. But when it comes to the urban heat island, you want to focus on temperature and humidity. So in this case, we also applied a statistical downscaling procedure, specifically trained with experimental data acquired by our weather station network to get a resolution down to 250 meters. Basically, this is what you need to characterize your very hot neighborhood. In this configuration, the model was validated with 2015 and 2019 experimental data and assessed against 13 different statistical parameters. So we consider it pretty reliable. And it provides 3-day forecasts of 4 environmental and health-related indexes. First of all, the urban heat island intensity, of course, that is the difference in temperature between the city center urban environment and its rural surrounding. And then the apparent temperature, the thermal universal climate index, and the discomfort index, that are all human biometeorology indexes widely used to evaluate, estimate, and assess the combined effect of temperature and humidity on human well-being.
The European-funded LifeAsti project has developed heat health warning systems, which are based on the association between mortality and temperatures. Through the definition of these models, it is possible to identify the thresholds above which there is an increase in the impact on health. And these are then used with weather forecast data to predict the occurrence of extreme conditions for health during heat waves. Within the LifeAsti platform, not only it is possible to have forecasts up to 4 days of the extreme temperatures within a city with a very high resolution to estimate the impacts of the urban heat island, but also to have the estimate of the heat health watch warning systems for each city included in the project. The warning systems are graded on a 4-level warning, from level 0 in green, which identifies conditions not at risk, to level 3 red warnings, which are when extreme conditions persist for 3 or more days, so identifying a heat wave, and have a high risk for health. Heat health warning systems are a key component of a heat adaptation plan, in that measures and actions need to be tailored around the different graded level of warnings predicted by the models. Heat adaptation plans should be set up based on emergency and health service organization of an institution, identifying a lead body and an information network to provide the dissemination at capillary level of the different warnings and to the different stakeholders involved in a heat adaptation.
So now Mrs. Pahola from our partner GitMap will present their part in the project.
Hello to everyone. My name is Maria Pachula, and I will present to you on behalf of Geospatial Enabling Technologies how the platform and the mobile application developed within the Life Asti project can contribute to better information decision making. Just a small introduction from for our company. GET is an SME founded in 2006. We are located in Athens, and our motto is making location matter using free and open source software. Our solutions are based on open standards, and we believe in data economy and its dynamics. Therefore, we develop solutions that are based on and create open data, which you will also see for the Life Asti project. Okay, now concerning the Life Asti platform, the application of the operational Life Asti forecast system is an accurate and real-time system for the monitoring of the urban heat island phenomenon. The implemented solution consists of an online application platform that disseminates information to the authorities and the public. The platform is based on free open source software and manages information that derive from forecast meteorological models, meteorological stations, but also from satellite data. The information is disseminated through a web application, but also through a mobile application. The objectives of the application is to reliably inform citizens and the authorities for extreme heat events in a user-friendly way, providing immediate and easy access to the data in the form of interactive maps and graphs. For the time being, the Life Asti forecasting system is applied in 4 cities. We have the 3 pilot areas, which is Rome, Thessaloniki, and Iraklio. But recently, almost 2 months ago, the platform has been developed also for the municipality of Pavlos Melas, while soon it will also be available for the municipality of Civitavecchia in Italy. For each of those cities, the application offers 3 things. We have a dashboard where the user can see a summary of the situation that prevails currently, or the situation that is predicted to prevail, let's say. We have the expert tools, which present in a detailed way the UHI related indices. We will talk, I will tell you exactly which these are in form of diagrams and maps. And we also have an interactive map where the user can see the spatial distribution of the urban heat of the UHI related indices for each of the cities. So, in order for you to for us to understand how these applications can contribute to better decision making, just a brief presentation of the information that are available via these applications. First of all, the user can select the forecast day. As it was presented before, the forecast is for the next 4 days. So we can select which of these days we are interested in. We can also select the neighborhood, because what is also important and was developed through the Life Asti project is that these indices are provided in a really high spatial resolution. So for the municipalities involved in the project, the authorities and the public gets information let's say, not for the whole municipality, but for very specific areas and neighborhoods. So, Also, we get the heat health warning level for each of the cities, the temperature, the relative humidity, and also the universal thermal index. Also, during a summer period, the register users receive automatic information in their emails concerning temperature and hazard warning levels. Next, we have the expert tools, where someone can get more information. And for each city, through the expert panel, the user can get the following neighborhood. Have the apparent temperature, the temperature, the relative humidity, and also the universal thermal climate index. For all of these above indices, the data are presented either in an interactive map in the form of a grid, and or either as a chart for the hourly average, maximum and minimum value of its index. We also have the dynamic map where the user can select the desired index and visualize it live on the map. On the right side, you can see several indexes. The indexes provided are indices provided are 13. You can select the wind, temperature, universal thermal climate index, relative humidity, apparent temperature, heating degree days, cooling degree days, discomfort index, dew point, total cloud coverage, volume of urban thermal island, short wave radiation, and long wave radiation. Moreover, if you use your mouse over the dynamic map, you can get the location information at any point. And here is on this slide, you can see the information you get when you select a specific point on the map. Besides the web application, there's also the Asti mobile application that has been developed and is freely available for everyone to download it for Android or iOS operating systems. The mobile app offers access to forecast data for all the pilot areas, plus the municipality of Pavlos Melas, the UHI dashboard with simple information, the diurnal variation of the basic thermal related parameters, the dynamic map for each of the UHI products. As we said before, the one-click information at city block scale, and also personalized information alerts for the registered users. Moreover, the registered users can select and pinpoint favored locations and get information for these selected areas. Okay, so it is very important. Sorry. Sorry for this. It is very important to highlight the following. The distribution of the information mentioned before is provided through open access ICT tools in line with the EU directive on public access to environmental objectives. All generated data is accessible through web services and can be used by third-party applications. The applications offer an online form where someone can search the metadata of the services and how to access them. Therefore, it's very easy for someone to integrate this data on third-party applications or other web services. As an example of this, we would like to present the Observatory of the Urban Green Siting for the municipality of Thessaloniki. And it is an example how easily someone can integrate the live Asti information generated via the platform to local ecosystem stakeholders and civil society, and provide tools to plan and implement strategic goals. Here on this image, you can see in this observatory of the urban green siting, what actually has been done is that it shows aggregated data concerning the distribution of urban green areas within the boundaries of the municipality, as well as the classification of the buildings based on the efficiency of green areas around these building blocks, and also in someone can overlay the results of the live Asti platform. So the live Asti forecasting platform serves as short-term adaptation tool by providing the before-mentioned information for each of the involved cities in high spatial resolution. As Francesca mentioned before, it is really important to have this information in high resolution and to provide to the municipality information that can help them break down and plan differently based on a city block level or neighborhood level. The UI-related forecasting products combined with the heat health warning systems can contribute to better informed decision-making for the prevention and the protection of the general public at neighborhood level. Also, the prediction of heating, cooling degrees days can assist in energy demanding monitoring and the control of power consumption in line with the Convention of Mayors initiative. And the combination with the climate change impact axis of the UI effect helps in the assessment of the impact of mitigation strategies, such as promoting green infrastructure. The live Asti platform applications, actually, it's the web platform and the mobile application, provide all these UHI-related indices in high spatial resolution, and this leads to better decision making. The live Asti forecasting system is a powerful tool that can support local authorities in their effort to achieve and exceed the EU climate and energy targets, supporting their commitments to initiatives such as the Mayors Adapt, the Convention of Mayors, or even the 100 neutral cities. This is all from me.
Thank you, Mrs. Pahula. And, well, now, give me a moment. It seems that I pressed the button. According to the agenda, I was supposed to give the microphone to myself. But if Mrs. Legnaud-Meriville is online, I would like to give the microphone to her, so I do not have to make her wait. And I will present later after her. Can you hear us, Mrs. Meriville?
Yes, I can. But this is the panel is not. This is not my panel yet. Right?
Yes. No, I am. The next presentation is actually mine, and then it's you. But I don't know if you have the time to wait. So
I can wait until I just have to jump into another meeting at 2. So we have half an hour, and this is very interesting. These presentations that I'm listening to are very interesting. So I would love to listen to your presentation too. If we can fit,
okay, thank you.
Fit both of our presentations by 2, I think it would be fine.
Yes, we can do that. So okay, we proceed according to the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, on behalf of the municipality, in today's conference, I would like to present how the Life Asti project contributed to the municipality's future planning in general and in specific ways. Very briefly, we'll see the current situation. We'll talk about our action plan measures, and then the contribution of the Life Asti to the operational program of the municipality, its resilience strategy, and the covenant of measures, with a light twist at the end of this. This is the municipality. It has more than 300,000 inhabitants, whereas the metropolitan area has more than 1 million people. This is a small statistic about the area. More than 30% are employed. More than 20% are retired. There are a lot of students in the city due to the universities. A small percentage is characterized as economically inactive population, as other in this diagram, and there's 10% unemployed. So very briefly, we can say that more than 20% of the people in Thessaloniki can be characterized as vulnerable people in the ages that are getting affected by urban heat island effect or heat waves in general. Some statistics about the buildings that are existing in the city. Only 17% of the buildings are 30 years old or younger. This means that the vast majority are very old buildings. Almost more than 40% were built before 1970. In terms of insulation, if you can see, almost half of the buildings have no insulation at all. So hence, there is a lot of energy demand during winter to get heated, and of course during summer days and in urban heat islands for getting cooler, with all the implications that this has in the urban heat island effect and in energy demand in general. So our action plan for the adaptation of the city of Thessaloniki, of course, has a lot of advantages, fortunately for us. They can all be characterized, maybe grouped in 3 groups. We can talk about its social strengths, environmental strengths, and of course, economic strengths. The action plan is developed around 4 main axes. The first one is about the prevention of the urban heat island effects influence on human health. The second, it's about how to protect the population by implementing appropriate management measures, and this is where we think that the heat health warning system comes in action. Third axis is about disseminating the appropriate information, and of course, the fourth axis is how we can gain from the experience that was given to us through this participation in Life Asti project. Very briefly, I'll give an example of how we disseminate, the warnings that come out of the heat health warning system. Once it is issued, we then redistribute it in our municipal website. During summers, usually this follows the warning that comes from the General Secretariat for Civil Service. However, I've specifically chosen one of the last warnings that came out last year, and if you see the date, the last warning that came was mid to end September. And there were, maybe some of you remember, I remember it because I was, of course, involved in this. There was some 4 to 5 days that our heat health warning system predicted that this is rather dangerous, of course, for the vulnerable populations that I talked about earlier. Also, some of our municipal units are already using the heat health warning system to inform their employees. For example, the municipal police is consulting the application because it has a lot of officers working outside in harsh conditions, and hopefully in the future more municipal units will consult the platform, like our technical services or others. So we pass on to the recommendations. Of course, the major recommendation is that as a city, we need more green. Not only Thessaloniki, of course, but most cities. We need to develop, as I said, more green, and in order to do so, we need to identify appropriate spaces We need again to disseminate the appropriate information, and we need to find a way to mobilize the private sector, because the local administrations by themselves, I don't know if we are going to reach our goals. Examples of more green, you can see the pictures in the slide. The two pictures on the right are examples, real examples applied by the municipality. On the top of the screen, you can see a green roof at the municipal school building. And at the bottom right is a renovated urban park of the municipality. In the middle, there is a vertical garden. It is not one of the municipality, although the municipality, I know, has at least one, and I know it's planning to have more vertical gardens in the future. Another recommendation is that we need more water. We need to include the water element in in the cities in order to be cooler. And so we are fortunate as a city that we have a very extended coastline, and the sea breeze helps alleviate the effects of the urban heat island effect. And there are also other solutions that can be applied, like blue roofs, and some suggestion that is included in our action plan is also to be able to provide drinking water in, between small walking distances to the public, and not necessarily have to buy water like plastic bottles, so we can assist them in this way. Another recommendation is the use of proper construction materials. This has to do with shading or other use. I will focus on the picture on the right, which again demonstrates one of the, this recommendation is already being applied by the municipality. The photo is from the guided visit that was organized from the Life Asti project, and you can see one of the engineers of the municipality demonstrating. The area is the Papanastasi Vulgari Park, and one of the engineers is demonstrating how we use the materials that can allow water to pass through them and reach underground and not eventually run off. And I know, I think that our technical services will design more projects in this way. Let's pass how the Life Asti contributed to our operational planning. The local administration in Greece is obliged to have operational plans. In order to formulate our operational plan, which is the second one that we've had as a municipality, we've used the experience gained from previous cases and from the participation of several European projects that are dealing with several issues, not only climate change, but homelessness, migration, resilience in general, sustainable mobility, and so on. Of course, Life Asti assists us in regards to climate change. Our operational plan has 4 pillars. You can see them in this slide, and we can identify that Life Asti is contributing to each one of them. For example, in the pillar of environment, quality of life, it is helping the municipality to increase its resilience against climate change. Regarding health, we think that it's helping us improve public health services. As far as local economy and employment, not only the project itself, but also the projects that are being recommended as good practices within our action plan could help boost local financial activities and employment, of course. And finally, all the applications that the previous speakers have talked about are helping Thessaloniki to be characterized, we think, as a smart city. Thessaloniki also has a resilient strategy. Everything began several years ago when we became part of the 100 Resilient Cities initiative. Of course, that had to end at one point. Fortunately, we received funding from the local operational program of the region of Central Macedonia through ERDF to continue our resilience efforts with a project called Urban Resilience Observatory. So all the results that are available through this project are being treated by our urban resilience observatory, and will be applied to the renewal, the updating of a resilience strategy that has just begun and hopefully will finish in the next coming months. Finally, when we started this project back in 2018, we were hoping that the Life Asti project will help us achieve our commitments with the Covenant of Mayors, and of course it has done so. But quite recent success of the municipality has changed this ambition, and now we are hoping that the experience we gained from the Life Asti project will assist us in the commitments that we have now as a city, from being selected as one of the 100 EU mission cities, climate neutral and smart cities. I know it helped us to support the application along with other projects and ideas that we have, and hopefully will assist us in reaching the goals that we've set here. And I will finish my presentation with some of the evaluations that we were able to get about our projects within the Life Asti project. So seven good practices were evaluated, and hopefully, and fortunately, the results are very encouraging. Projects being implemented, having been implemented and designed by the municipality, are assisting in CO2 absorption and energy demand and consumption. And based on this, we have, as a municipality, designed several projects with the same mentality. We are talking about the energy upgrade to several municipal buildings, public space renovations with some type of bioclimatic design in them. The vertical gardens are coming in place in the next period. Green roofs that were implemented over this period are going to be part of our plan as well. If I'm not mistaken, there will be a green roof in this municipal building, the City Hall, over the next period. So if we ever cooperate again, we could be able to show you this. And quite recently, we engaged in the energy communities. In fact, the next month, we are co-organizing a discussion about energy communities and how we can assist with energy consumption over this. Thank you for your attention. This slide is to show to you that a lot of people worked for this project. Actually, the municipality team was very extended because it's an interdisciplinary project. And of course, we had a contractor, a tender that assisted us in our obligations specifically for our action plan. So thank you for all of you for being here, and this is all from me. We have one presentation, Vasilis, and I think now, Ms. Mirvili, it's your turn, so you can start sharing your screen and see what the City of Athens can offer to this conversation, which is a lot.
Hello, everyone. Just give me a second to try to do the share screen, because I don't know this platform very well. Can you see it?
Yes, it is visible to us.
I should probably just make just a second. Yes, it's good now.
Excellent.
Okay, great, thank you. So I should start by saying that I am very, of course, impressed with the work that you've been doing with Life Asti in Thessaloniki. We don't have much to add to this, because you have all more or less covered. We have been covering similar things. I'll just remind you and talk a little bit about Athens. I'll start by saying that, as we all know, there is in general in the world great influx into cities, and the situation is getting worse and worse. It's the first time in the history of the planet that we have so many people, so many people living in cities instead of the countryside, and the projections are bad. We also know that global temperatures are steadily rising, and that we've been living increasingly hotter and hotter decades and hotter years. We also know that cities are, I mean, this is an interesting, some interesting data that we got from C40, which is that up to today, 350 cities in the world people that live there have been suffering temperatures higher than 35 degrees Celsius. And by 2050, the 350 cities will become close to 1,000 cities, which means that while now about 200 million people have to deal with these extreme temperatures that are really difficult for the bodies to handle, 1.6 million people by the middle of the century will be dealing with these kinds of temperatures that is right now about 40% of the total urban population. So we have this big problem of cities and heat, and we know that heat is the most dangerous of all the extreme weather events, and that it kills more people than anything else. And this is interesting because not many people know that. The people think that other extreme weather events are much deadlier than heat, but it's by far more mortality is related to very high temperatures. And here we come to Athens. I want to remind you that it's one of 38 municipalities in the larger Athens metropolitan area. The Athens municipality has about 6,500,000 people, but it's used by a couple of million daily, because it gets a lot of traffic, of foot traffic, as they say. And this is a nice kind of visual of this of this city of ours, and how densely built it is and how sprawled out it is. And this is a couple of pictures to remind you of how the predominant materials are asphalt and concrete. We have about 80% coverage of non-permeable surfaces in Athens. And we have, we also, as Thessaloniki was saying, we have a very specific and built environment that actually exploded between the 1960, the decades of 1960s, 70s, and 80s, with most of our buildings built then, and covering all of our water streams and waterways. You can see here how where the green spaces are in Athens. This is actually a GIS map that has on it, if you go deep, if you zoom in, it has all of the trees and the pavements as well. But you can here see the street line trees. The street line trees, but here you can see how unevenly the big green spaces are distributed in Athens. So we have the west part of Athens with much fewer green areas, and of course the west part of Athens is also the hottest part of Athens. We, as Thessaloniki, we did the resilience strategy. We launched it in 2015, and among the stresses and the shocks, among the shocks, actually, we had people discussing about heat waves predominantly, and flash floods and peri-urban fires. So, and this is something that we believe that the people of Athens are quite conscious and quite worried for, and I'll come back to this later. We created the Athens Resilience Strategy with 4 pillars, which you can see here, and actions and sub-actions. And one of the main pillars was the climate adaptation plan, which also had the climate mitigation plan, which was also included. And the climate adaptation plan was mostly, it included 29 actions, mostly dealing with rising urban temperatures. We had several extra actions that related to these issues, like the energy poverty mitigation roadmap, because we have a high percentage of energy poverty in Athens, and more we have data that show that there's a large percentage of people in Europe that are suffering from energy poverty, and now with the rising prices in energy, this is going to be something that we have to be very conscious of and very worried about. Athens, there was recently, a few years ago, from Newcastle University, a report that showed that Athens, from all the European cities, is in the top 3 that will be facing severe impacts from heat waves, drought, and peri-urban fires. And Moody's also released a report evaluating the credit risk for 30 European cities. And again, Athens was one of the examples that they used as particularly vulnerable to heat and heat waves, again, droughts and peri-urban fires, and that this will probably affect its ability to have credit, to have access to credit, unless it takes it seriously and it adapts. So for Athens, it seems like we will have about doubling the prognostics are that we will have almost double of days of heat waves by the middle of the century, and severely rising temperatures. And these heat waves together with the urban heat island, which was already discussed previously, is really a deadly, makes our city into a deadly area for a lot of its citizens. We obviously have a very large urban heat island that reaches up to 10 degrees Celsius during the day and 5 during the night, the difference between the center of the city and the suburbs. We have a serious number of deaths that are related to high temperatures per year. And of course, the costs, we have figured out what the costs are, that the commercial activity declines, that we have new types of species that are invasive that are coming because our temperatures are changing, and losing a lot of species that are now are starting to not be resilient to the types of temperatures that we have. And to a large extent, that is due to the fires, which are get closer and closer to our cities. I want to remind you that last year we had this terrible heat wave, which for some reason in the Greek media, we got no data about the number of deaths that were suffered, the people that we lost due to that particular heat wave. Politico.eu evaluated the deaths of the last 5 years and figured that the excess deaths after extracting the people that we lost due to COVID, that the excess deaths that happened between the end of July and the middle of August last year, which was the period of our heat wave, was 2,300 people. And 1,400 were lost actually in 1 week, which was during the peak heat period. We know we are working together with the Adrian Arsht Resilience Center, and we are trying to create a similar type of response to heat and be prepared to heat. I will talk about it further down, but these are some of the visuals for our heat campaign that you see here. We also did this year a new a survey that one of the questions was which ones do you consider the largest challenge for the city or the largest threat to the city in relation to climate change? And the first one, 63% of the answers, we got 2,000 answers in this particular survey. 63% was that people are worried about the increase of days of high temperatures and heat waves. In 2017, we created these maps correlating heat to also demographic data. Here on the left, you see demographic data relating to children. The darker, the black kind of blocks are the ones that are more children are, and the lighter grayish ones are the ones with less children from ages up to 16. We also have similar things for people, similar maps for people that are older based on demographic data. We're now expecting the new census data to do a similar thing. Oh, in the middle, you see a heat map, and on the right, you see a correlation of where the lowest income households in Athens. These are, this is based on people that were applying for food, so it was actually below poverty level households that we are that are being mapped here. We have a new map that shows land temperatures. Here we see the mean daytime land surface temperatures for the last 5 years. So we have this map that shows us particularly where the hottest neighborhoods block by block are in Athens, and don't get the blue and the green. I mean, the very dark blue, the gray areas are the green areas, and also they are indicated by these little bubbles, the little green bubbles. But the blue areas are already 35. It starts from 35 degrees for land surface temperatures, and up to 45. But again, this is land surface, it's not air, but anyway, we do have a sense of where the most pressure to the built environment is, so we know that it does correlate with air temperatures. And we're now trying to bring more data and create these maps that bring together all these issues that have to do with demographic data, income distribution, air conditioning penetration, etc. So we have a more clear idea of Athens. The way that we think of how to deal with extreme heat is goes in 3 basic categories: awareness raising, preparedness, and redesign. In awareness raising, we've done something very similar to the Life Asti work. We have correlated the kind of we have taken data from the last 3 decades of the type of air masses that sit on top of Athens, that have been sitting on the top of Athens for the last, as I said, 3 decades, for heat, humidity, atmospheric pressure, wind, etc., and created specific typologies, and then correlated to these typologies with mortality data, and again figured out the percentages of risk that and where they jump up, and created 3 different categories of heat waves, which this summer we're going to start running together with meteo.gr, which is one of the big meteorological sites that people visit. We also have a campaign running, and a phone app that gives you, that's called Extrema Global, that gives you personalized risk. And to that we have added, except from the heat, which the heat indication that you get on your phone based on where you are in real time, and whether it's risky to you based on your age and your gender, and also whether you're taking you have pre-existing conditions. We have a second indicator which the city asked from Extrema Global to add, which has to do with pollution and air pollution. So we have two indicators, one for heat and risk, and the second one for atmospheric conditions, pollution. As you very well said, this has to go together with the preparedness plan. The preparedness plan that we're putting together has to do with a hotline that a heat line hotline that we're putting together. Also, revving up our public cooling centers. We're doing capacity building for the people together with the Red Cross for the people that are working at Help at Home, and we're trying to create buddy systems in neighborhoods through volunteer networks. Also, as we are moving to the third level of heat wave, we have non-working hours for the employees of the municipality, and we're trying to figure out, we haven't figured it out yet, how to do the energy support to households, and we're discussing with they about diverting energy from based on specific indications of our categories from more industrial to residential areas to avoid blackouts. Finally, as you also said, the most important thing that we can do is to actually cool the city, because everything else that we've talked up to now is short-term measures. I would like the central image here is the image, a rendering for this work that we're doing with a financial tool that's called Natural Capital Finance Facility, which is linked to LIFE. It's part of the financing tools that belong to LIFE, and we're creating 3 urban corridors connecting existing green places in Athens in 3 neighborhoods, and this is one of them in near Academia Platonos, which also has a lot of indices relating to all of the different ecosystemic services that this type of corridors are going to bring to the neighborhoods. And I would like to bring some examples of other cities that we are very impressed with and very proud of about what they've done. And like Medellin, that has created 36 green corridors when Athens is doing 3. And Seoul in South Korea, which has restored this stream, which is 5.8 kilometers, and managed to lower temperatures in 2 or 3 blocks around it up to 5.9 degrees Celsius, which is amazing. And I will stay with that, and I will say thank you very much for having me in your last conference and letting me know what you guys have been cooking all this time.
Thank you for participating and providing us with all this information.